Chapter 431. In the entire Tianling dynasty, she was the only one who had a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The 13 Yu guards had followed her for many years, so they definitely wouldn't be mistaken. It was because of that feather that we believed the words in the letter. And from then on we always thought that you were actually still alive. Chu Liyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If she was dead, she was indeed still here. If she was alive, she had actually just woken up a few months ago. So, after leaving Heaven's Canopy, we split up and secretly searched for your whereabouts. This time it was also because this subordinate had inquired about some information that caused me to have some doubts about your identity. Chu Liyue nodded in understanding. So, when you came just now, you deliberately made that gesture? Yes. You're so sure that it's me. Looking at Qi Han's confident look, Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh. Qi Han said honestly, I heard that Mu Qinghe was here, so I followed her on purpose. Chu Liyue's smile froze. At first I just wanted to know why she stayed here for so long. Later I realized that something seemed to be wrong, so I started to secretly investigate you. Qi Han made it sound simple, but he had actually made ample preparations before coming here. Before he came, he already had a lot of confidence in his heart. Whether it was the astonishing talent of cultivating all 3 skills or the extremely similar expression in her eyes, he couldn't help but think more. But most importantly, especially when I saw that you brought a gift for Hong Yao that day and Hong Yao's attitude toward you was so familiar, I was certain of my guess. Chu Liyue was stunned. You know all this? Qi Han nodded honestly. Chu Liyue, she actually didn't notice at all. Although her current strength couldn't be compared to before, her sensitivity and reaction had always been good. In the end, Qi Han had secretly investigated her for so long, but she actually didn't notice at all. After a long silence, Chu Liyue finally said faintly, It's been a while since we last met. I haven't seen you for more than a year, but your hiding skills have improved. A suspicious shade of red flashed across Qi Han's unburned face. Your Highness is too kind. 7 Coldness still had a lot of shortcomings. Chu Liyue, this brat really thought that it was praising him. However, looking at his scarred face, Chu Liyue felt distressed. If everything was still fine, is there a way to remove your scar? Qi Han was stunned. He didn't expect her to suddenly change the topic. He touched his face and said, Actually, this is quite good. Many people can't recognize my identity, so it's much more convenient to do things. Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something. Wait, could it be, because that flame was mine? At that time she was inconsolable, so she simply chose to self-destruct. She wanted to perish together with Jiang Yuqing and Shangguanwan, so she released all the power in her body and burned it. How terrifying is the power of the fire produced by the Tianjing Yuan Meridian. If not, it wouldn't have been able to give the 2 of them such a harsh blow. I just didn't expect it to implicate Qi Han. Normal herbs can't heal this kind of scar because the Tianjing Yuan Meridian's power must have been left inside. If I can heal my Tianjing Yuan Meridian, I might be able to easily solve this problem. Chu Liyue rubbed her glabella. Okay, since you're done talking about this, tell me who told you about Situ Xingchen and asked you to come, right? 7 Stars' body froze. At the same time in the palace. Blessing Palace was completely surrounded by greenish-white flames. The flames shot up to the sky and almost lit up half of the night sky. The Imperial Guards and a few strong warriors outside were all trying to barge in. However, the fire produced by the phosphor powder was very strong, so normal water was useless. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, the crowd became increasingly anxious. Emperor Zhaowen stood at the side, and no matter how the crowd persuaded him, he refused to leave. The bright and scorching fire shone on his face, making his face look even darker. Your Majesty, don't worry. We've set up a Xian formation around Blessing Palace again, and it's heavily guarded. Anyone who comes out from there won't be able to escape successfully. Chu Ning, who rushed over later, tried to persuade him. Emperor Zhaowen placed his hands behind his back and didn't say anything as he stared at Blessing Palace closely. No one knew what he was worried about. Upon seeing this, Chu Ning didn't say anything else as he turned around and rushed to the front, leading the Imperial Guards to strengthen the defense. At this moment, Elder Zhong Yi finally crossed the flames and rushed into the main hall. The moment he entered, he saw someone coming out from the ground not far away. It was Situ Xingchen. Elder Zhong Yi was elated and immediately rushed over. Xingchen. When Situ Xingqian heard this familiar voice, she immediately looked up. Elder Zhong Yi. Elder Zhong Yi then saw the bloodstains on her face and body, and his expression changed drastically. What happened to you? When he walked closer, he then realized that not only was Situ Xingqian's force sealed, but her shoulders and ankles were also injured. At this moment she couldn't even walk normally. Situ Xingqian's eyes were bloodshot and filled with deep hatred. It's Chu Luiyue. She was the one who stole my things and injured me to this extent. Elder Zhong Yi, you must avenge me. Elder Zhong Ye's heart ached terribly. Don't worry. When we get out of here I won't let her off. Situ Xingqian was suddenly stunned and suddenly grabbed his shoulders. No. She just came out from below, you should have seen her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 432. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows. She came out? But I didn't see anyone just now. An ominous feeling rose in Situ Xingqian's heart. You really didn't see her? Then what about now? Is she still hiding somewhere here? This place has already become a sea of fire. With her own abilities, how can Chu Luiyue successfully escape from this place without a sound? As she spoke, she agitatedly grabbed Elder Zhong Ye's arm. Elder Zhong Ye's heart ached when he saw her frantic and crazy expression. I wonder how much torture Xingqian went through inside for her to become like this. He comforted her. Xingqian, don't be anxious. Let's leave this place first. We'll talk about the rest later. Definitely not. Situ Xingqian screamed shrilly. She took that wooden box. I spent so much effort to get this thing from the Empress. How can I let Tu Luiyue snatch it away just like that? I'm definitely indignant. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows and asked. What wooden box? Is it very important? Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in. She didn't tell anyone about the wooden box and kept it carefully. Even when she asked Father and Elder Zhong Yi for help this time, she only said that Rong Jin was the fake Heaven's chosen son and that she was implicated. Facing Elder Zhong Ye's question, she instantly felt guilty. Why yes, it's more important. You must help me. Elder Zhong Yi surveyed the surroundings and his expression was tense. But Emperor Jiawen and the rest are already here and there will be more and more people. The later it takes, the harder it will be for us to leave. Also, I don't know who set this fire on purpose. We must get out of here as soon as possible. If not, your body alone won't be able to take it. He was very strong, but it wasn't easy for him to bring Situ Xingqian out in her current state. Besides, he hid his identity this time. If Emperor Jiawen and the rest knew who he was and the news spread to Mingyue Tianshan, he would definitely be in trouble. Xingqian, don't worry. Since you know that it was Chu Luiyue who stole your things, you'll have the chance to snatch them back in the future. Then he carried Situ Xingqian on his back and planned to find an opportunity to rush out. Situ Xingqian was in a dilemma, but she knew that this was the best choice given the current situation, so she could only accept it. A silver barrier instantly enveloped the two of them. The light flickered and covered most of their figures. From the outside it was impossible to see who was inside. With a tap of his foot, Elder Zhong Yi instantly charged out of the greenish-white sea of fire and into the air. They're out. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the besieging crowd. Several figures immediately chased after him. Emperor Jiawen closely stared at the unity boundary. Even though he couldn't see their faces, he could vaguely see that there were two people inside. His heart sank. One of them must be Situ Xingqian. Stop them at all costs. Emperor Jiawen ordered. Countless sharp arrows flew out. But they were all blocked by the silver barrier in the end. But just as they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared. They were blocking their way. When Elder Zhong Yi saw that person's face, his expression immediately turned solemn. It's actually Yi Zhiding. The next moment, the other party's words completely stunned him. Long time no see. How have you been? Yi Zhiding recognized me. Thoughts flashed across Elder Zhong Ye's mind. I've only met Yi Zhiding a few times and the other party hasn't even seen my face. How can he confirm my identity? Yi Zhiding smiled as he waved the fan in his hands. Since you're here, why don't you sit down and have a drink? Elder Zhong Yi guessed that Yi Zhiding was just bluffing. He didn't even plan to reply as he crazily circulated the force in his body. In an instant the pressure on the barrier became even stronger. It then rapidly flew to the side. Elder Ye's smile didn't change as he waved his wrist, and the fan was instantly flung out. Wah! The moment it flew out, the fan actually fell apart and transformed into numerous white feathers that flew toward Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingchen. The sound of the feathers piercing through the air was heard. In the blink of an eye, those white feathers actually flew to the surroundings of the barrier. He was completely surrounded. Elder Zhongyi immediately felt a strong suppression coming toward him. The surrounding space also gradually became heavy and stagnant. Even their speed started to slow down. Elder Zhongyi was shocked. Yixiding's fan is actually so powerful. At this moment, one of the white feathers suddenly pierced forward. The sound of something breaking was heard. Then Elder Zhongyi was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the silver barrier around him. A white feather slowly pierced in. He immediately wanted to repair it, but it was already too late. The next moment, that white feather suddenly dissipated. The entire barrier also instantly transformed into countless rays of light and scattered in all directions. The veil hat on his head was also crushed by this terrifying force. But just as the two of them were about to be exposed to the crowd, Elder Yi suddenly shouted, "Stop! Collect!" The moment he said this, the white feathers instantly multiplied and connected with each other in layers. They completely covered Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingchen's figures. Such a huge commotion happened in the palace, so it naturally couldn't be hidden. Very quickly, countless pairs of eyes in the imperial city looked in that direction. In the dark night, only the fire that shot into the sky was eye-catching and shocking. Quite a few people started to secretly guess. Did something happen in the palace? During this period of time, the imperial city really wasn't peaceful. After just a few days, the empress passed away, Rongjin was deposed, and even the palace was burning. The entire imperial city's atmosphere seemed to become much heavier as a result. In the darkness, something seemed to be moving. It was unsettling. At this point, Chu Liuyue's room was completely silent. After asking that question, Qi Han fell silent. Chu Liyue quietly looked at him. She wasn't suspecting Qi Han. If not, she wouldn't have directly admitted her identity. However, Qi Han clearly didn't explain some things clearly. Even if what he said previously was reasonable, he just coincidentally followed Mu Qinghe here and found her by following the clues. But if he didn't know something, how could he be so sure that a young girl from a declining family in country Yaochen would be the high and mighty princess back then? Besides, even fewer people knew that she wanted to snatch the things in Situ Xingchen's hands. Could it be that Qi Han found out all of this by himself? Mu Qinghe also suspected me, and the two of them even interacted quite a bit. But because of her completely different appearance and body as well as her impeccable identity, he couldn't confirm it for a long time. How did Qi Han find out? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 433. Qi Han knew that he could not hide it anymore. After thinking for a while, he finally opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Your Highness, this news came from Zhenbao Pavilion." Chu Liyue was stunned. Second Master Yen? Qi Han nodded and then shook his head. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. Did the head of Zhenbao Pavilion order Second Master Yen to pass this news to you? A look of surprise flashed across Qi Han's eyes. He did not expect her to figure it out so quickly. However, Her Highness has always been intelligent, so it's not strange that she could think of this. I went to Zhenbao Pavilion to buy herbs before. Later on, I found a letter in the box they sent. That letter. Chu Liyue understood. I see. If it's that person, it's not strange. This person has a mysterious background and is very resourceful. Country Yaochen's imperial mausoleum is almost completely under his control, let alone others. But, if he deliberately told Qi Han this, doesn't it mean that he already knows my identity? Chu Liyue asked, "What about the letter?" Qi Han said, "That letter was specially treated. After I opened it and read it, I burned it." Chu Liyue felt a little regretful. The other party was obviously very cautious and didn't want to leave any traces. Qi Han glanced at her carefully. "Your Highness, I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. I originally planned to tell you after I found out that person's identity. In this world, other than the 13 U guards, there's only one other person who knows Her Highness' true identity. In fact, he even found out before they did." After Qi Han received the news, he felt very conflicted. On the one hand, he was overjoyed and excited that Chu Liwei might be Her Highness. On the other hand, he was secretly worried that the other party would use this to do something that would harm Her Highness. Chu Liwei thought for a moment, smiled faintly and shook her head. You want to find out his identity? I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Also, since he already knows and told you, there's nothing to worry about. He has helped me so many times. If he wanted to deal with me, why would he need to spend so much effort? That person's strength and background are both extremely strong. From today onwards, don't waste any more time and energy investigating him. Chi-Han was a little surprised. Just who was that person to make His Highness so fearful? Judging from His Highness' tone, he seems to be somewhat familiar with that person. Your Highness knows that person? No, I don't. Chu Liwei said straightforwardly. She actually wanted to know the identity of the first master more than anyone else. But the other party clearly didn't want her to know, so why should she waste her energy? When it was time to know, he would know. Since Chu Liwei had said so, Chi-Han naturally did as he was told. Where are the other members of the 13U Guard? Do they know me? They're not in country Yaochen, but we've always been in contact. But I haven't told them about you. Before personally confirming His Highness's identity, he would not reveal it without permission. Chu Liwei smiled with satisfaction. Well done. You're still as cautious as ever. She had no choice but to acknowledge Chi-Han today. The 13U Guards were still loyal to her and they were a huge help to her. However, the fewer people who knew about her identity, the better. Don't let them know about this first. When the time is right, I'll tell them personally. Chi-Han immediately replied. Yes, Your Highness. After straightening out all these matters, Chu Liwei felt much better. Last question. Her slender and fair fingers tapped lightly on the table as she asked, enunciating each and every word. Did Mu Qinghe betray me? Zhong Yi were both smart people. Let's not beat around the bush. Inside the palace, Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingchen were trapped in a cage made of white feathers, and they couldn't move at all. Elder Yi stood in front of the two of them and looked down at them from above. Emperor Zhouan was standing at the side. Other than that, there was no one else. Elder Zhong Yi didn't say anything, and Situ Xingchen seemed to have fainted due to excessive blood loss. I know a thing or two about Mingyue Tianshan's rules. If news of you barging into country Yaochen's palace gets out, it won't be good, right? Yi Zhiding still had a smile on his face, but the words he said made Elder Zhong Yi break out in a cold sweat. Even though Mingyue Tianshan accepted disciples like the other clans, there was a bottom line. They didn't allow anyone to interfere with the country's affairs. Elder Zhong Yi had committed a huge taboo. Not only would he be punished, but he might even be chased out of Mingyue Tianshan. Zhiding, what exactly do you want? Shouldn't I be the one asking you that? It's the middle of the night, yet you came all the way here, barged into Blessing Palace and even forcefully took her away. Speaking of which, isn't this all your fault? You're twisting the truth. Xingchen is country Xing Luo's eldest princess. You shouldn't have locked her up like this. Elder Zhong Yi was even angrier when he said this. You tortured her until she doesn't look like a human anymore, yet you're blaming me. You're too much. You can't say that. Didn't you burn Blessing Palace just now? It would take a lot of effort to completely extinguish such a strong fire. Some of the palaces at the side also suffered the same fate. Elder Zhong Yi was so angry that his beard trembled. I didn't set that fire. Elder Yi was dazed. Why not? Didn't you plan to set the fire and take her away in the chaos? Why would I use such a despicable method? If it weren't for that fire, I would have left with Xingchen long ago. You wouldn't have the chance to speak here. Looking at the agitated and angry Elder Zhong Yi, Yi Zhiding became suspicious as he exchanged glances with Emperor Zhouan. Could it be? It really wasn't him? There's no harm in telling you today, there's someone who entered the Blessing Palace before this old man. Also, he even attacked Xingchen. He crippled one of her shoulders and one of her legs. When Elder Yi heard this, he immediately knitted his brows and carefully looked at Situ Xingchen, who had fainted on the floor. This injury wasn't caused by Emperor Zhouan? Emperor Zhouan also realized that something was amiss. He immediately stepped forward and stared at Elder Zhong Yi. Who is it? Elder Zhong Yi sneered. You all know this person too, Chu Liwei. Impossible. Old man Yi denied it without thinking. How could this be done by his precious disciple? How is it impossible? This was something Xingchen had said herself. Yijing Chu Liwei is your disciple, right? She came and left so smoothly today. Could it be that you're secretly helping her? Bolsh *. Yi Zhiding directly swore. How can you believe Situ Xingchen's words? She had a grudge with my disciple long ago. She must have taken the chance to frame her. Elder Zhong Yi chuckled in disdain and looked at Emperor Zhouan. Xingchen also said that Chu Liyue stole something from her. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Digression. I'm going out for a while and I'm updating at night. A better reading experience comes from my Yuan. Chapter 434. Hearing this, Elder Yi thought that this was bad. Didn't His Majesty also want to find something from Situ Xingchen? Since Zhong Yi said this, he might be suspicious. As expected, he turned around and saw Emperor Zhouan knitting his brows as if he were suspicious. Elder Yi immediately asked, Zhong Yi, why are you here? Zhong Yi, since this is the case, tell me what Liyue stole from Situ Xingchen. Emperor Zhouan also held his breath. Zhong Yi was stumped. Situ Xingchen didn't even have the time to tell me. However, I'm sure that it's what Emperor Zhouan wants from Situ Xingchen when he locked her up. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Emperor Zhouan. Emperor Zhouan, you should know best what she stole, right? Elder Yi sneered. Zhong Yi clearly doesn't know. He might even be making it up. Emperor Zhouan kept quiet for a while and glanced at the unconscious Situ Xingchen. I'll talk to her about this personally when she wakes up. Elder Zhong Yi immediately became alert. What do you mean? I mean that before the matter is investigated, I'll have to trouble Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingchen to stay here for a while. Oh right, Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen's wedding is being prepared. As Situ Xingchen's elder, it's good for you to attend as well. Then Emperor Zhouan raised his feet and planned to leave. Rongsha. How dare you? Elder Zhong Yi was stunned by his words. In a moment of desperation, he directly shouted Emperor Zhouan's name. Who is that Rong Jin? How can he be worthy of Xingchen? If you insist, don't blame me for being rude. Emperor Zhouan stood still and sneered. I'm calling you Elder Zhong Yi on account of Mingyue Tianshan. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. You're not the only strong person in Mingyue Tianshan. Elder Zhong Yi's chest tightened. You've caused such a huge commotion tonight, so you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. Elder Zhong Yi, you're a smart person. If you're willing to cooperate, I'll take it that nothing happened today. But if you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. One Situ Yen wasn't enough. Did they think that with Zhong Yi, everything would be fine? Elder Yi stroked his beard. I remember that it has indeed been a period of time since I went to Mingyue Tianshan. Looks like I should find some time to go back and pay him a visit. Elder Zhong Yi was so angry that his face turned red. He never thought that he would be threatened by Emperor Zhouan and Yi Zhiding. However, this was indeed his weakness. He couldn't bear the punishment of Mingyue Tianshan. If he forced his way through, it wasn't like he couldn't leave this place. But in that case, only Situ Xingchen would be left here. He was truly worried. Thus, after Elder Zhong Yi's expression changed several times, he finally gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. He glared at Elder Yi. Yi Zhiding, don't be smug too early. In this old man's opinion, that precious disciple of yours is very scheming. Who knows when I'll screw you over and you won't even know. Elder Yi smiled and said, Zhong Yi, as an outsider, you don't have to worry about the matters between us. If you have the time, you should take more care of Situ Xingchen. If this injury drags on for too long, it'll leave behind repercussions. You. Alright. I haven't seen you for a few years and your skills don't seem to have improved. You should take this chance to reflect properly. After Elder Yi said that, he immediately snapped his fingers. Countless white feathers instantly released a strong force and forcefully separated the two of them. Then they quickly gathered. Elder Yi, I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you these few days, said Emperor Zhouan. Elder Yi nodded. Situ Xingchen was still manageable, but Elder Zhong Yi. Only Elder Yi could suppress him. Elder Yi waved his hands. I've long found him an eyesore, so I'll take my revenge this time. But, what do you think of what he said previously? Emperor Zhouan hesitated for a while and finally said honestly, I think it might be possible. Elder Yi knitted his brows. Does this mean that your majesty really suspects Lu Yu? Emperor Zhouan smiled bitterly and shook his head. I have no choice. Others don't know how important that thing is, but you know it best, Elder Yi. I'm not doing this for myself, but for the entire Yao Qin. Elder Yi thought for a while. Why don't I go and ask him directly? Emperor Zhouwen thought carefully and instantly felt that this seemed to be the best choice. I've always liked Chu Liyue. On one hand, she's Rong Xiu's fiancée now. If I touch her, Rong Xiu definitely won't be willing. On the other hand, there's also Mu Qinghe. Then I'll have to trouble you, Elder Yi. The fire in the palace burned for the entire night. It was only completely extinguished when the sun rose the next morning. The entire Blessing Palace had been completely burned down, and even the surrounding halls had become ruins. Quite a few palace servants had also lost their lives. It was rumored that the Blessing Palace had not been maintained for a long time, so it accidentally caught fire and caused this fire. Actually, anyone with eyes would know that the greenish-white fire wasn't an ordinary fire. It was most likely caused by phosphor powder. Ordinary people didn't even have this thing. It was obvious that this matter had deep implications. However, since the palace had already given an explanation, nobody would be so insensible as to investigate further. However, the Blessing Palace used to be Rong Jin's residence. Now that he was just crippled, such a fire started. It was hard not to think too much. This time he clearly didn't have a chance to turn things around. Princely Mansion. Early in the morning, Eunuch Min personally came over and said that His Majesty had summoned Rong Xiu to the palace. Everyone in Princely Mansion was very surprised. His Majesty had always thought highly of Rong Xiu. Considering that his body wasn't well, he rarely let him enter the palace. Today this meeting came out of the blue. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to think too much. After simply packing up, he put on a black cloak and followed Eunuch Min into the palace. Emperor Zhouwen was waiting in the imperial study. Father. When he saw Rong Xiu enter and wanted to bow, Emperor Zhouwen immediately said, "There's no need for that. You don't have to be so formal. I called you here today because I have a few things to ask you." Rong Xiu's jade-like face was as gentle as usual. "I'll tell you everything I know." Emperor Zhouwen opened his mouth, but he hesitated in his heart. Rong Xiu was his most beloved son. For so many years he felt very guilty that he couldn't accompany Rong Xiu by his side. Hence, after Rong Xiu came back, he had been thinking of ways to make it up to him. Asking him this question now. It's unavoidably inappropriate. Rong Xiu quietly stood there as if he didn't see Emperor Zhouwen's dilemma. After a while, Emperor Zhouwen finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He asked, "Rong Xiu, when the palace was on fire last night, something went missing. Someone said that it was Lu Yu who did it. What do you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 435. If other people were here and heard this, they would definitely be shocked. This matter has a lot of implications, yet Emperor Zhouwen directly asked about it. This shows how much he trusts Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu widened his eyes and shock flashed across his eyes. "Father, did you call me here just for this?" Emperor Zhouwen looked at him solemnly and didn't say anything. Rong Xiu's lips curved up slightly and a light flashed across his eyes. "Father, are you suspicious of Yuer?" Emperor Zhouwen rubbed his glabella. "Rong Xiu, you've always been the smartest." He had to admit that Elder Zhong Ye's words did make him waver. Last night he almost didn't sleep well for the entire night as he kept thinking about this. Why did it have to be Chu Liyue out of so many people? Besides, judging from Chu Liyue's various shocking performances during this period of time, she might really be hiding some secrets. Even though Elder Yi had already promised to personally ask Chu Liyue, he was still worried. However, Chu Liyue's identity was special, so he couldn't and wasn't willing to touch her easily. Hence he could only ask Rong Xiu to come. Rong Xiu thought for a moment and suddenly said, "There's a problem. Father, you don't seem to know about it." Emperor Zhouwen sat up slightly. Rong Xiu still had a smile on his face, but there was a playful look between his brows. "Xiangchen. She admired me for many years." Emperor Zhouwen was instantly dazed. Very quickly he understood something. Could it be that Situ Xingchen is especially hostile towards Chu Liyue because of this? Emperor Zhouwen slowly knitted his brows. Even so, she shouldn't purposely frame you. After all, she already had a marriage agreement with Rong Jin. What good does it do her to provoke Chu Liyue? Rong Xiu's smile deepened, but it was tainted with a layer of coldness. Imperial father knows best what is going on with the engagement between her and Imperial brother. Emperor Zhaowen fell into deep thought. I don't know if father still remembers that I went to the arena on the last day of the Qingjiao competition. Emperor Zhaowen nodded. Of course I do. That day I originally wanted to ask you for help, but I met Situ Xingqian off stage. This son inadvertently discovered that her sleeves were embroidered with cloud patterns that were almost exactly the same as this son's. Rong Xiu's tone was slightly cold. Emperor Zhaowen's heart thumped. In the past, Rong Xiu really loved that strange cloud pattern. Many of his clothes were embroidered with that pattern. Maybe it's just a coincidence? After I returned that day, I thought about it and felt a little uncomfortable, so I ordered the servants in the manor to burn all the clothes with that cloud pattern. Emperor Zhaowen's expression changed. He had some recollection of this incident, but he didn't pay much attention to it back then. He just thought that Rong Xiu wanted to throw all the clothes away because he had just recovered from a serious illness and wanted to change his mood. He didn't expect this to be the reason behind it. That day, Situ Xingqian also arrived outside Princely Mansion and saw this scene. After leaving, she went to a remote alley and personally killed a few cultivators. She dismembered their corpses and chopped them into a pile of mush. Only then did she stop. Rong Xiu spoke slowly, but the content made one's heart skip a beat. Father, do you think that this is also a coincidence? Emperor Zhaowen finally couldn't sit still and suddenly stood up. Where did you find out about this? Rong Xiu calmly smiled. Father, if I don't even know who went to Princely Mansion and what kind of attitude they had toward me in the Imperial City, how can I continue living? Emperor Zhaowen looked at him with a complicated gaze and didn't say anything for a while. Yeah, I almost forgot. Even though Rong Xiu's body was weak, he was very smart. He had stayed in Mingyue Tianshan for so many years. If he didn't even have this bit of ability, it would really disappoint him. Those few people usually hang around the various casinos and brothels in the Imperial City, and they usually attract a lot of hate. After they died, nobody cared about them. This incident was suppressed just like that. However, if you want to confirm it, it's very easy. You don't have to say anything. I believe you. Emperor Zhaowen tiredly waved his hands and leaned against the chair. Rong Xiu kept quiet. The room fell into silence once again. Emperor Zhaowen's thoughts were in turmoil. Anyone would be able to tell that something was wrong with this matter. For so many years, Situ Xingqian had always been high and mighty, gentle and elegant in everyone's eyes. But from this incident, it was obvious that she wasn't like that at all. In actual fact, after interacting with Situ Xingqian these few days, he already had this feeling in his heart. However, he didn't expect her to be even more vicious than he imagined. Linking all of these incidents together, many doubts were instantly resolved. This means that Situ Xingqian purposely targeted Lu Yu several times because her love turned into hatred? In this case, there would be a logical explanation for Situ Xingqian's involvement in Rong Zhen's incident and her accusation of Chu Luyue for no reason. Rong Xiu lightly smiled. I didn't say that. Father, you have your own judgment of who's right and who's wrong. Emperor Zhaowen opened his eyes and looked at Rong Xiu with a deep gaze. I didn't expect that the first time you chose to confess to me was because of Chu Luyue. By saying all of this, Rong Xiu was undoubtedly admitting that he had his own power in the Imperial City. He was far from being as aloof from worldly affairs as he had shown before. He definitely knew that this was a huge taboo for emperors. Aren't you worried that I'll be wary of you? Asked Emperor Zhaowen word for word. The sunlight shone in from the window and reflected in Rong Xiu's eyes. He said, I'm just choosing the more important option after weighing the two options. And I'm his most important and only choice. Almost at the same time, Chu Luyue was waiting for Elder Yi in her yard. So many things happened the night before, so Situ Xingqian would definitely point me out and expose everything to Emperor Zhaowen. Thus I was already prepared. However, I didn't expect it to be my mentor. Chu Luyue smiled and went up to him. Mentor, what brings you here? Elder Yi looked at her and suddenly asked in shock, when did you break through and become a rank 3 warrior? If I didn't remember wrongly, didn't this girl just become a stage 2 warrior during the Qingjiao competition? Why did she become so fast? Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to be different from before. If Elder Yi carefully checked Chu Luyue's Yuan Meridian, he would know that this slight change was caused by the upgrade of her Yuan Meridian. Chu Luyue's eyes curved into crescents. I just broke through 2 days ago. I learned quite a lot at Taiyin Academy's library, so I tried to break through recently. As expected, I succeeded. Elder Yi thought about it and felt that it made sense. He had long known that Tu Liwei had a lot of force in her body, so it was only a matter of time before she broke through. You're indeed my disciple. Haha. Upon seeing Elder Ye's happy face, Chu Liu's lips curled up and she seemingly reminded him unintentionally, "Why are you here today? Is there a reason why you came to find me today?" Elder Ye's laughter suddenly stopped. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 436. Actually, he wasn't willing to make this trip. Chu Liyue was his only disciple and he couldn't wait to dote on her, let alone question her. But if he didn't ask, he wouldn't be able to answer to Emperor Zhouwen. After much thought, it was more suitable for him to do it. Elder Yi coughed. "Girl, where were you last night?" Chu Liyue blinked. "Of course I was at home. If not, where else could I be?" Old Mr. Yi carefully observed her expression. He always knew that Tu Liyue was stronger than what she showed. At the very least, she was above his standards in terms of medicine refinement. He knew very well that this girl had many secrets. But he didn't want to suspect her because of this. "You should know that there was a fire in the palace yesterday, right?" Chu Liyue nodded and smiled. "It's hard not to know about such a big fire, mentor." Elder Yi thought for a while and finally asked directly, "What happened last night?" "What happened yesterday, did it have anything to do with you?" Chu Liyue blinked. "What do you mean?" Elder Yi stared at her closely and after a while he couldn't help but slap his thigh. "I knew that Situ Xingqian did it on purpose. Tell me what exactly happened. Why did she want to kill you?" Chu Liyue was speechless. Even though she knew that Elder Yi would side with her, this was too straightforward. Chu Liyue lightly coughed. "It's a long story. Make it short. He still has to rush back to discuss this with Emperor Zhouwen." Chu Liyue shrugged. "She thinks that I snatched her man." Elder Ye's expression instantly became strange and he was even a little speechless. "Rong Xiu." Chu Liyue nodded. "Situ Xingqian personally told me last night. How could it be wrong?" Elder Yi suddenly took a step back and sized up Chu Liyue. "Mentor, what are you looking at?" asked Chu Liyue strangely. Elder Yi suddenly chuckled. No wonder. No wonder. So, it's because of this that Situ Xingqian kept trying to drag you down." Chu Liyue's eyes twitched. For some reason she seemed to hear a whiff of smugness. "Enough. Master already knows. Just focus on your cultivation at home. There was no need to care about anything else." Old Man Yi said and turned to leave. Suddenly he turned his head and asked, "By the way, did Mu Qinghe say when she was leaving?" Mu Qinghe's eyes moved slightly, but she quickly suppressed the slight ripples and shook her head gently. "Not yet. But it should be soon." Mu Qinghe had gained nothing from the trip to the Imperial Mausoleum, so she definitely wouldn't stay for long. Old Man Yi nodded. His expression became more serious as he warned, "Going to the Tianling dynasty is a great opportunity. You must make good use of it." But the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Elder Yi hesitated for a while and finally swallowed them back down. "If you want to leave, you must inform Master in advance." Chu Liyue nodded. Today was the day of the Empress's funeral. Originally, everything was well prepared, but the sudden fire in the Blessing and Harmony Palace caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Even though Emperor Zhouwen was very sad, he still decided to keep the Empress's funeral simple. In the end, only the noble consort's funeral was held. Emperor Zhouwen collapsed from excessive worry, so he couldn't attend the Empress's funeral. Rong Jin suffered consecutive blows and was bedridden. He didn't even leave Crown Prince Mansion's doors. Oh, now that the plaque had been removed, it couldn't be considered Crown Prince Mansion anymore. In the end, only Prince Ping Rongqi and Rongzhen went. But out of the two of them, one had been a rich man's son for many years and didn't have any real power, while the other had a shattered pearl of essence and was completely useless. Even if they were added together, they didn't have much of a presence. As for the Xi family, only a few people went. The Empress's entire funeral was very simple. It started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. At this point, everyone could tell that Emperor Zhouwen did this on purpose. As the Empress, she was the country's mother. After her death, she should hold a national funeral to show her status. But now, the funeral wasn't even as grand as a consort's. If the Empress didn't do something to anger His Majesty when she was alive, why would she have such an ending after her death? All sorts of rumors circulated on the streets, but they all silently disappeared in the end. Not long later, the crowd threw the Empress's death to the back of their minds and started discussing another matter. The Crown Prince position is empty, and His Majesty will definitely choose a new Crown Prince from the few princes. Emperor Joan didn't have many sons, but there weren't many who were suitable to be the Crown Prince. After much discussion, the crowd finally realized that the best candidate was the third prince, Rongjio. In terms of capabilities, he entered the Northwest Army and fought on the battlefield for many years. He had many outstanding military achievements. In terms of age, he was in his prime. He was also the second-ranked prince after Rongjin. Other than his low birth status, he had almost no flaws. Almost everyone was certain that Rongjio would become the new crown prince. But the current Rongjio wasn't so optimistic. This was because he had already been locked up in the residence for a few days. The Empress's funeral had already ended, but father still hadn't let him go. This inevitably made Rongjio worried. At this point, he suddenly heard that father urgently summoned Rongjin into the palace. It seemed like the two of them had talked for a long time in the imperial study. The longer he waited, the more uneasy Rongjio felt. Finally, on this day, someone came to the palace. The Empress was killed by the third prince, Rongjio. From today onwards, he will be locked up in the heavenly prison and await his punishment. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI.net. Chapter 437. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Rongjio was originally the most suitable crown prince among the few princes, and many people had already secretly started thinking about how to get close to him. They didn't expect him to be imprisoned for such a heinous crime overnight. At that moment, the entire imperial city changed. I heard that the third prince's birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then. He held a grudge for many years, so he took action against her. Who knows about the harem? But even if it's true, the third prince is too impulsive. As long as he can become the crown prince, he can do whatever he wants. Why did he have to take action at this juncture? After the Northwest Army came back, His Majesty didn't let him go back for a long time, so he's naturally anxious. Besides, the Empress's funeral was so simple. Can't you see the problem? Even if His Majesty hates the Empress, he can't let the third prince kill her. He deserves it. These few princes are either crippled, locked up, or sick. If this continues, there's nothing to pick on. When Chu Liwei walked past the streets, she could vaguely hear some whispers. Even though they weren't allowed to talk about it openly, it was hard for people not to notice with so many things happening in the palace. When she arrived at Princely Mansion, she realized that the security here was obviously much tighter. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. The entire imperial city was in chaos, and it wasn't easy for Princely Mansion to stay out of it. Seeing Chu Liwei, the guards at the door hurriedly welcomed her. "Ms. Li, you're finally here. His Highness has been waiting for you for a while." Chu Liu's lips curled up slightly as she walked in. When she saw Rongjio, he was taking a nap in the backyard's bamboo forest. On the stone table were 2 cups of freshly brewed tea and a half-finished chess game. A light breeze blew over, and a few green bamboo leaves landed on Rongjio's snow-white robe, making him look even colder and more noble. "Your Highness, you knew I was coming?" Chu Liwei brushed away the leaves in front of his eyes and walked over. Rongjio picked up the porcelain cup that was as clear as jade. A white mist rose in spirals, making it almost impossible to see the expression in his deep eyes. His scarlet lips curled up slightly, and his smile was as gentle and calm as ever. "This is the tea that I personally brewed. Let's see how it compares to yours." Chu Liwei sat down and picked up another cup. A strong fragrance wafted over, lingering at the tip of his nose, refreshing his mind. Chu Liwei took a sip. After the faint bitterness, there was a sweet aftertaste. She nodded honestly. "Your Highness' cooking skills are much better than mine." Compared to him, the ones she had picked up were really not worth mentioning. Rongjio smiled and shook his head. "But this prince only likes yours ginger tea." "The tea is good, but I don't like it." Chu Liwei glared at him. "Your Highness is still in the mood to joke at a time like this?" "That's exactly what I was thinking." Rongjio raised his brows. "Also, what do you mean by this time?" Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. The entire imperial city is in a mess, but only this person can leisurely brew tea and play chess in his own backyard. He's really calm. She shook her head and cut to the chase. You already knew that His Majesty was going to do something to the third prince? Previously, Rong Xiu had mentioned that someone wanted to frame Rong Jiu and blame him for the empress's death. However, Chu Liwen never expected that person to be Emperor Zhouan. No matter what, Rong Jiu is his biological son. His actions are no different from sending Rong Jiu to his death. Rong Xiu's expression didn't change, and his lips curled up into a casual smile. Since you know what's going on, why do you have to ask me? This is an admission. Chu Liwen knitted his brows and was still confused. But why did His Majesty do this? If he didn't want Rong Jiu to inherit the throne, he had many ways. At the very least, Rong Jiu was trapped in the imperial city and had almost all of his military power confiscated. He couldn't do anything. Besides, Rong Jiu had fought on the battlefield for many years and had many achievements. Even without his identity as a prince, his contributions were still significant. Why must Emperor Zhouan be so ruthless? His Majesty knows that the person who killed the Empress is Situ Xingqian. Until now, this news had been tightly sealed. Are you suspecting that father is siding with Situ Xingqian? Asked Rong Xiu with interest. Chu Luiyue shook his head. Judging from the situation that night, Emperor Zhouan definitely didn't want to let Situ Xingqian off. He just wanted to get something from her. However, there's really no need to frame Rong Jiu for the Empress's death. She knew very well that the royal family was heartless, and she even had an unforgettable painful memory. However, Emperor Zhouan clearly had other motives for doing this. Rong Xiu smiled lightly. If he knows his place and is an idle prince in the imperial city, father naturally won't do anything to him. He can make father decide to do this. Looking at his meaningful expression, Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. Your Highness, you mean that the third prince? Rong Xiu placed a chess piece down. Chu Luiyue looked down and his heart skipped a beat. Once this piece was placed, the originally deadlocked black and white chess pieces on the chessboard instantly broke the stalemate. They crazily fought each other. Rong Jiu actually wants to rebel? If not, I really can't think of any other reason for Emperor Zhouan to do this. Your Highness, how did you know? Once Chu Luiyue asked this, he couldn't help but regret it. As long as Rong Xiu wants to, he can know everything. However, Rong Xiu's expression became strange. Chu Luiyue looked at his eyes and suddenly widened her eyes in shock as she thought of something. Could it be? Rong Xiu looked at her with a deep gaze, and his lips suddenly curved up as he waved at her. Come over. Chu Luiyue stood up in confusion and walked over. Rong Xiu held her hand, pulled her into his embrace and tightly hugged her as he bent down and kissed her. Chu Luiyue was taken aback and her heart trembled slightly from his scorching aura. What's wrong with this person? Why is he so sudden? Why, Your Highness? Chu Luiyue pushed his shoulders, but he hugged her waist very tightly as if he wanted to embed her in his embrace. Rong Xiu only stopped when he kissed her until her limbs turned weak and she melted into a puddle of spring water in his arms. He then switched to a light kiss. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes that were as bright as the night sky became moist, as if a pinch would overflow with sweetness. Rong Xiu's eyes flashed and he reached out to cover her eyes. He moved closer to her ear and said in a low and hoarse voice, as if something was rubbing against his heart. Don't look at this prince like that. Chu Luiyue's ears also heated up. Your Highness. You knows this prince best. Rong Xiu suddenly couldn't help but bite her delicate earlobe. Chu Luiyue felt itchy but her body went soft. Rong Xiu buried his face in her neck and closed his eyes. She always knew what he was thinking. From the past to the present. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 438. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know what Rong Xiu was thinking. His hot breath landed on her neck and behind her ears, making her feel itchy. The breeze blew and the bamboo forest swayed. Chu Luiyue instantly became much more awake. No wonder Rong Xiu kept looking at the entire imperial city's military strength distribution. It turns out that he had long been preparing for this day. Rong Jiu had stayed in the imperial city for a few months and didn't even leave the city. Now that he suddenly decided to rebel, someone was clearly adding fuel to the fire. And this person was Rong Xiu. Your Highness, when did you start planning all this? Chu Liwei couldn't help but ask. Rong Xiu's low voice sounded by her ear. Oh, it's quite early. When did third brother go to the Northwest Army? His tone was casual and calm, as if this was just a small matter. Chu Liwei was shocked and pushed him away. She looked back and stared at Rong Xiu in disbelief with her black eyes. Your Highness, you mean, but he didn't ask to go. Chu Liue's words stopped abruptly. Suddenly, an extremely absurd idea appeared in her mind. Rong Xiu saw her rare shocked look and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's not easy to see her reveal such an expression. Seeing his expression, Chu Liwei opened her mouth, but she didn't say a word. What else do I have to say? He's clearly admitting it. All these years, Rong Xiu's every move was actually under Rong Xiu's control. No matter if it was his determination to join the army after being bullied by the Empress and the Crown Prince, his outstanding military achievements, or his current situation where he had nowhere to go, it was clearly all in Rong Xiu's plan. But, it's dangerous to nurture a tiger. Now Rong Xiu wants to go against Emperor Zhouan, but he'll definitely become Rong Xiu in the end. Chu Liue's heart was in turmoil and she finally couldn't help but ask, did you tell His Majesty that the third prince was going to rebel? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly. You're underestimating father. Since third imperial brother had done this, how could imperial father not have noticed? I don't have much to do with this matter. I'd be a fool if I believed you. Chu Liwei cursed in her heart. Perhaps Rong Xiu also had a part to play in Rong Xiu's plan to attack. Third prince doesn't know about this? Rong Xiu raised his brows slightly. What do you think? Chu Liwei gasped and slapped her forehead. My brain short-circuited too. If Rong Xiu knew it, the Northwest Army's 5,000 elites are about to reach the imperial city. Rong Xiu gently caressed her slender and soft waist as he nonchalantly said, as for when they'll fight, it depends on father and third brother. According to Rong Xiu's personality, they shouldn't wait for long. Besides, father will punish Rong Xiu in the next few days. Chu Liwei put her hand down, opened her eyes and looked at him. Isn't all of this in your hands, Your Highness? Today, everything is under Rong Xiu's control. Rong Xiu chuckled. If I didn't hear wrongly, are you praising me? Chu Liwei was speechless. Is the praise more important than the matter itself? Country Yaochen is about to change. However, Rong Xiu didn't seem to care about it. Looking at her shocked and confused face, Rong Xiu laughed for a while before finally saying, Don't worry. Don't worry. Lord Chuning will be leaving the imperial capital with a group of people today to investigate some matters. If the imperial guards and the Northwest Army fight, Lord Chuning won't be implicated. Did he purposely send father away for me? Her conversation with Rong Xiu contained too much joy. Chu Liue's mind was filled with thoughts and she didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Rong Xiu with a complicated gaze. This man was devilishly handsome, extremely talented and terrifyingly scheming. But he just had to be so honest with her that she didn't know how to face him. He had plotted for so many years and played such a big game of chess, yet he told her so easily. Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll tell others about this? Asked Chu Liuei with knitted brows. Rong Xiu looked at her in shock as if she had asked a very stupid question. Which woman in this world would put the man she loves in danger? Chu Liwei was speechless. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this sentence, but why does it sound so strange? Chu Liwei stuttered, and her usually eloquent tongue seemed to be in a knot at this point. After a while she finally decided to give up and not harp on this matter. However, she still had the strangest and most important question. Your Highness, why are you doing this? One was his father and the other was his brother. In their bones the same blood flowed in their veins. Rong Xiu's actions were equivalent to starting a fight between Emperor Zhouan and Rong Xiu. A war was about to break out. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was the point to Rong Xiu? Rong Xiu thought for a moment and chuckled. Oh, I just felt that it was too troublesome to fight for it, so I found someone to do it for me. Chu Liwei was dazed. He did it for me. He's talking about fighting for the throne, right? How can he replace something like this? Besides, the most important thing is that if Rong Xiu really wanted the throne, why did he have to pretend to be sick for so many years? According to Emperor Zhouan's love for him, as long as Rong Xiu displayed his true abilities, just a small portion of his abilities, Emperor Zhouan would definitely make him the crown prince. Chu Liwei actually wanted to ask, but for some reason she had a strong feeling that it was best not to ask. Rong Xiu must have his reasons for doing this. After reacting for a while, Chu Liwei finally found her voice. But if that's the case, won't the throne be the third prince's? A faint smile appeared on Rong Xiu's face, but there was an indescribable suppression in his eyes. He slowly said, Who do you think helped third brother contact the Northwest Army and made him take the last pill of confidence and decide to mobilize the army? Of course, it's my people. Emperor Jiawen gathered all the officials to discuss Rong Jiu's punishment. After an intense debate, they finally came to a conclusion. The third prince, Rong Jiu, has committed treason. He took the chance when Emperor Jiawen asked him to take care of the empress, harmed the empress and tried to destroy the corpse. His crimes are utterly devoid of conscience and the heavens cannot tolerate it. He will be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 439. Early in the morning, the imperial city's streets and alleys were filled with people. Whether it was out of curiosity, pity, or some other reason, everyone rushed to the Meridian Gate. The execution ground was tightly guarded by armored imperial guards. Rong Jiu had not been brought over, but the surroundings were already filled with people. It was very noisy. This third prince has made great contributions in the Northwest Army a few years ago. He's very impressive. Who would have thought that he would become a prisoner in the blink of an eye? His achievements are enough to intimidate the emperor. He hasn't even stepped out of the imperial city's gates these few months. Isn't it obvious what the higher-ups are thinking? From what I see, the crime is fake and the execution is real. But among the remaining princes, the third prince is the most suitable candidate for the crown prince. Isn't it too heartless to do this? How much do we know about the palace? Anyway, that person is still in his prime. After a few more years, the princes below him will also grow up, right? It's a pity that the third prince's birth mother has already passed away, and he doesn't have a high status. At this time, there's no one who can help him. The crowd discussed fervently and they had different opinions about this matter. However, everyone knew that everything was already set in stone by now. Time passed bit by bit and the sun gradually rose to the middle of the sky. Suddenly, the originally noisy crowd quietened down. The crowd split into two sides and a path opened up. Everyone seemed to have sensed something and they all looked over at the same time. A group of people on horses walked over. The person in front was the Si family head, Si Yi. He was clearly here today to supervise the execution. Compared to the past, the current Si Yi looked much more haggard. His cheeks were deeply sunken and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the things that happened during this period of time had a big impact on him. After all, the Empress Si Huijing was his biological sister. He had just finished the Empress's funeral and he had to come here immediately after. He didn't even have time to rest. Si walked forward step by step. He could clearly feel the countless gazes around him landing on his body. But in actual fact, his body and mind were numb. Originally, he didn't want to come, but His Majesty had given the order, so he could only follow it. A prison wagon slowly followed behind him. The disheveled man in the metal cage was the current third prince, Rong Jiu, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform and had his hands locked. He was forced to kneel there with his head slightly lowered. His messy hair fell down and covered most of his face. However, everyone could still vaguely see his current expression. Indifferent and cold. His body even carried a valiant aura that could only be obtained after experiencing life and death on the battlefield. In short, there was no trace of panic or despair. Around the prison cart, there were also imperial guards following closely. However, all those people combined couldn't even compare to Rong Jiu's aura. Probably affected by some kind of emotion, the places where the prisoner carriage passed by became incomparably quiet. The people standing in front of him even unconsciously took a step back. This third highness for some reason looked a bit inexplicably scary. When they arrived at the execution ground, Si Yi raised his hand and the prison cart finally stopped. "Bring him here." With an order, the imperial guards at the side immediately went forward and brought Rong Jiu out of the metal cage. Two extremely sharp swords were pressed against Rong Jiu's neck as they brought him to the execution ground in the middle. From start to end, Rong Jiu's expression didn't change much. But when he stood still at the execution ground, he suddenly looked up and glanced in the direction of the palace as mockery flashed across his eyes. It seems like father won't change his decision. Today he was determined to put him to death. Rongjio retracted his gaze and looked down to hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Unless it was his last resort, he actually didn't want to do this. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years and had experienced countless life and death situations. He didn't expect that he would end up with such an outcome. Anyone would feel hopeless if they were in his shoes. "Hurry up and kneel," yelled the person behind Rongjio impatiently as he harshly kicked Rongjio's knees. However, Rongjio didn't kneel down from the kick. His physical body was as hard as a piece of steel. Seeing that Rongjio didn't kneel down as he wanted, the man who kicked him was shocked. Rongjio slowly turned around and glanced at him. The man immediately felt guilty under her gaze, and an inexplicable trace of fear appeared in his heart. Then he frowned and hollered, "What? What are you looking at? Do you think you're the high and mighty third prince? He's just a criminal on death row, yet he's still so arrogant when he's about to die. Kneel down." That man gave the person beside him a look, and the two of them exerted their strength. The two long swords instantly slit Rongjio's neck and red blood slowly seeped out. The last bit of hesitation in Rongjio's heart finally disappeared. He slightly bent his knees as if he was really going to kneel down. However, in the next moment his body suddenly leaped up and kicked the two people closest to him. His actions were too fast, and the two of them didn't even have time to react before they were harshly kicked away by Rongjio. Ce immediately realized something and hollered, "Capture! Capture him! Rongjio actually wants to escape." The surrounding crowd also reacted at this point and rushed forward. An enormous figure suddenly appeared above Rongjio's head. Ce looked over and was shocked. It was a fourth-grade fiend, a white thatched falcon. Well, that white thatched falcon suddenly spread its wings. Rongjio flipped over and jumped onto it. "Go!" Following a clear cry, the white thatched falcon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. At this point, the surrounding crowd finally understood that it was Rongjio's fiend. When he was locked up in the prison, he didn't have anything else on him other than his prison clothes. But they actually forgot that he had his own fiend. Rongjio had been very low profile these few months in the Imperial City, so they actually forgot that he had such a trump card. Even though this white thatched falcon was a fourth-grade fiend, it was ferocious and had strong combat skills. It was almost considered the top among the fourth-grade fiends. The human and fiend's figures quickly flew into the distance. Ce immediately said, "Prepare. Prepare your bows." The many Imperial guards immediately took out the bows on their backs and aimed at Rongjio in midair. However, right at this moment, a few figures suddenly charged out from the crowd, and they charged towards the Imperial guards. Choo-choo. Messy air-piercing sounds were heard, and many of them deviated from their original directions. They didn't even touch the edges of the white thatched falcon's wings. Ce looked at the people who suddenly rushed over in shock and anger, and he suddenly widened his eyes in shock. They actually took the initiative to use their killer move. They came prepared. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 440. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. Those people were wearing very normal clothes, and they looked no different from the commoners who were here to join in the fun. It was precisely because of this that their actions were especially sudden. Ce roughly glanced at them, and there were at least hundreds of them. These people were clearly here for Rongjio. More importantly, from the ruthless moves of these people, it was obvious that they were trained on the battlefield. Ce suddenly understood something and gasped. Rongjio actually mobilized the Northwest Army to save me. Didn't they say that he handed over his military power after returning to the Imperial City and didn't contact the Northwest Army again? What exactly is going on with these people's appearance? In just an instant, screams, weapons clashing, and the sound of sharp weapons piercing into flesh were all mixed together. Countless people screamed and escaped. Ce was about to chase after Rongjio when two people suddenly rushed over from the side and directly blocked his path. The next moment they actually attacked before Ce did. Ce was forced into a chaotic battle. The two parties had just exchanged a few moves and he knew that things were bad. These people all killed their way out of a pile of corpses. Even if their cultivation levels weren't as high as his, they were the best at killing people. Once they attacked, every move was fatal. There were no tricks at all. In the midst of the chaos, Ce looked around and realized that things were exactly as he had expected. The Imperial Guards, who had the advantage in numbers, were gradually at a disadvantage. He flung something out of his sleeves without hesitation. Bang! A signal shot up to the sky. At the same time, Emperor Joan was reading something alone in the Imperial study. But after taking 2 glances he stopped and rubbed his glabella. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Suddenly Eunuch Min's anxious voice was heard from outside the door. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something happened. Emperor Joan's heart skipped a beat as he walked over and personally opened the door. He frowned and asked, what exactly happened? Eunuch Min was shocked as he hurriedly took a step back and knelt down. Your Majesty, the 3rd prince ran away. Emperor Joan's expression turned even colder. What do you mean he ran away? What is Ce doing? Where are the Imperial Guards? Eunuch Min wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly said in a trembling voice, that's right. Your Majesty, someone has blended into the crowd and started fighting with the Imperial Guards. They escorted the 3rd prince away. The ominous feeling in Emperor Joan's heart intensified. This is the Imperial capital. Who would help him like this? They seem to be the Northwest Army. Bang! Emperor Joan kicked Eunuch Min's heart. Trash. Eunuch Min fell to the ground with a dull pain in his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Emperor Joan had already strode outside. Send more men immediately. Seal the city gates. Not only Rongjio, but we can't let anyone related to this incident go. Eunuch Min endured the pain and hurriedly followed. Yes. Emperor Joan's face darkened. As expected, Rongjio had already secretly contacted the Northwest Army. He had even made such preparations. He planned to escape from the execution ground. Previously, there were even people who wanted to make him the crown prince. What a joke. Rongjio was very ambitious. How could he be willing to be a prince with no real power? Once he became the crown prince, he might not be able to sit on the throne. Emperor Joan was walking forward when someone hurriedly rushed over and directly knelt in front of him. Your Majesty. Upon seeing this person, Emperor Joan's expression changed. If it weren't for something major, this person definitely wouldn't have appeared here. As expected, that person's next sentence made him feel like he was struck by lightning. Wei Lin led the Northwest Army soldiers here, and they're already 20 miles away from the Imperial capital's gate. They said that the 3rd prince had contributed greatly to the country of Yaochen and had always been loyal to you. Now you're listening to the slanderous words of a villain and want to execute him. This really hurt the hearts of countless soldiers guarding the borders. So they're here to ask you to clear the 3rd prince's name. Emperor Joan's figure swayed. Northwest Army's Wei Lin, aren't they Rongjio's men? How is this clearing Rongjio's name? They're clearly rebelling. This place is thousands of miles away from the borders, and it takes at least 3 to 4 days for a message to travel back and forth. However, the Imperial edict to kill Rongjio was only issued yesterday. These people came so quickly, which means that they arrived long ago. Now they actually have the cheek to accuse me? Eunuch Min hurriedly went forward to support Emperor Joan, but Emperor Joan flung him away. The next moment, Emperor Joan harshly slapped the person kneeling in front of him. That man's face was instantly slapped to the side. His cheeks rapidly swelled up. However, he immediately bowed and kowtowed. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's all my fault. You actually only discovered such an important matter now? What use do I have for you? Emperor Joan's hand was completely numb from the slap, but his chest was still filled with anger and his face was green. Your Majesty, those people seem to have come in batches. They only gathered again after all of them arrived. That's why I didn't discover them in time. What kind of place is the Imperial capital? We're in charge of guarding the city gates, so how dare we slack off? However, those people from the Northwest Army are too sneaky. We didn't even realize it previously. When we realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. How many people did they send? Asked Emperor Joan as he took a deep breath. Around 5,000. Emperor Joan panted. 5,000 Imperial Guards are nothing to worry about. Where's Chuning? Get him to bring people over immediately. Your Majesty, did you forget that you just sent Lord Chuning out of the city yesterday? Reminded Eunuch Min carefully. Emperor Zhaowen was dazed. He then remembered that he seemed to have found some news related to the bronze vat outside the imperial capital, so he had already sent Chu Ning to investigate. They weren't even in the imperial capital now. Let Zhao Ming take over. You immediately gather the imperial guards. You must stop them outside the imperial capital's gates. There are more than 10,000 imperial guards, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 5,000 people. The man kneeling on the floor seemed to have seen through Emperor Zhaowen's thoughts as he braced himself. Your Majesty, the imperial guards are scattered all over the imperial capital. It's already difficult to gather them immediately. The most important thing is that the people who came seem to be the Northwest Army's elites. It's not that I'm afraid, but I know too well how troublesome this situation is. How could a person who could survive on the battlefield be compared to these pampered imperial guards in the imperial capital? If there's no other way, the city gates will fall in no time. Digression. The plot is stuck and it's very difficult to write. I'll go back and sort out the plot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 441. It was early winter in the imperial city and the wind was biting cold. Outside the city gates, the soldiers from both sides were in a standoff. Time passed bit by bit and the afterglow shone down. Outside the city gates, 5,000 elites stood in formation, filled with a strong murderous aura. After looking at them for a long time, one could almost smell the sand and blood mixed in the air. The imperial guards on the city walls were fully armed. A tall man dressed in black armor stood in the middle of the group. This person was the deputy commander of the imperial guards, Zhao Ming. Chu Ning was not around, so he took on the task at the last moment and became the commander of the imperial guards. His eyes were fixed on the front as he shouted in a deep voice. Where is the Northwest Army's Deputy General, Wei Lin? His low and powerful voice instantly spread far and wide. A man in red armor took a step forward. I'm here. It was an extremely muscular man who looked no more than 30 years old. He had a beard on his face and looked very fierce. Zhao Ming took a deep breath. Wei Lin was very famous in the Northwest Army. He was violent and strong. Moreover, he was a stage 5 warrior who fought his way out on the battlefield. Just by himself he could take on 100 people by himself. Not to mention the thousands of soldiers behind him who were obviously not easy to deal with. Rongjie was fully prepared this time. According to Yao Chen's laws, the deputy general can't leave the army without His Majesty's orders. He can't bring soldiers into the imperial city. Wei Lin, are you rebelling? Wei Lin laughed. Zhao Ming, it's fine if you're not strong enough, but it turns out that your brain is useless too. I've already said that this is not a rebellion. It's just that His Majesty's actions toward the third prince are unreasonable. He even hurt the hearts of the Northwest Army's soldiers. We're only here to help His Highness the third prince and to seek justice for ourselves. Zhao Ming was about to retort when he suddenly saw a commotion in the crowd opposite him. Then it suddenly split in the middle. A man walked out from the middle. He was wearing armor and his face was solemn and majestic. It was Rongjie. Zhao Ming's heart sank. Rongjie indeed successfully escaped. After the riot at the execution ground, the imperial guards were collectively mobilized to search for Rongjie's whereabouts in the entire imperial city. However, they did not find anything until he arrived. It turned out that Rongjie had already left the imperial city during the chaos. At this time, the prison clothes and shackles on his body were long gone. He was dressed in martial attire and looked bloody and fierce. Greetings, Your Highness. Wei Lin cupped his fists and bowed. The soldiers behind him immediately shouted in unison. Welcome back, Your Highness. Their shouts shook the heavens. Rongjie raised his palm and immediately suppressed the voice. When Zhao Ming and the other imperial guards saw this scene, they were all shocked. The fact that Rongjie could do this was enough to show his prestige in the military. No wonder he dared to do this. Rongjie looked at Zhao Ming expressionlessly. Zhao Ming, I don't want to hurt the innocent, so I'll give you a chance. Open the city gate. Otherwise, don't blame I for being merciless. How could Zhao Ming do it? Your Highness. Doing such a rebellious thing, in the end he would be spurned by the world. I advise you to repent and be saved. Return with me now and apologize to His Majesty. Rongjie sneered. I have already been labeled as a rebellious person. Since that's the case, I might as well fulfill this label. A trace of uneasiness surged in Zhao Ming's heart. I joined the army when I was 14 years old and fought on the battlefield for many years, killing countless enemies. There are a total of 23 scars on my body and every one of them is fatal. I have made great contributions to country Yaochen, but in the end, all I received was a prison uniform and countless crimes. If he admitted it, how could he be reconciled? Apologize. The person sitting on the dragon throne now did not have the qualifications to order him around from a high position. Zhao Ming said in a deep voice. Your Highness. Before he could finish speaking, he saw Rongjio raise his hand high. Then it fell harshly. The first person to break the city gate today will be promoted by 3 levels. 1,000 taels of gold. A low and powerful voice instantly sounded. The countless Northwest Army soldiers behind him instantly became excited. They raised their arms and shouted in unison. Kill, kill, kill. Wei Lin looked up and laughed. Ha! Brats, didn't you hear what His Highness said? This time I won't go easy on you. The city gate. Let me take it. Then Wei Lin's figure instantly rushed out. When one person moved, 1,000 people followed. Seeing Wei Lin go straight to the city gate, the people behind him followed one after another. Rongjio suddenly pulled out the padao that he always carried with him. The sound of the padao rang out. The wind howled. The next moment he tipped his toes and personally attacked. Today he would return all the humiliation and torture that he had suffered in the imperial city. Zhao Ming immediately said, "Release the arrows." The imperial guards hidden behind the battlements of the city wall drew their bows in unison. Countless black iron arrows pierced through the air. The two sides were completely engaged in a battle. When the city gate was in a tense situation, the imperial city was also in chaos. Even though a portion of the imperial guards were responsible for guarding, the people's hearts were in chaos. The streets and alleys were in a mess and almost no one appeared. Everyone was hiding in their own homes. After Rongjin was removed from his position, everyone thought that Rongjio would naturally be made the new crown prince. Who knew that not only did he not become the crown prince, but he even directly started a rebellion. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Rongjio had long made preparations. If not, he wouldn't be able to gather the Northwest Army in such a short period of time. For a moment, the crowd couldn't tell if Emperor Zhou let Rongjio down first or if Rongjio started the rebellion first. However, Chu Liyue didn't have time to care about all this at this point. This was because Mu Qinghe personally came to her residence. In the room, Chu Liyue slightly widened her eyes. What? Leave now? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 442. Is there a problem? Asked Mu Qinghe coldly as she knitted her brows. The other side kept urging him to go back and he couldn't delay any longer. Besides, the injuries he suffered in the Imperial Mausoleum had mostly healed over the past 2 days. Now was the best time to go back. That's not it. Chu Liyue thought for a moment. It's just that the Imperial City's situation is a little special. Won't it seem strange if we leave now? The Northwest Army led by Rongjio has already started fighting with the Imperial Guards. It doesn't make sense for us to leave at this time. Besides, I already know that all of this is Rongxio's plan. How can I leave without seeing the results? Mu Qinghe lightly asked in return. Even if they start fighting, what does it have to do with us leaving? It's just a small fight. This small country Yaochen isn't even as big as a state under me. Chu Liyue instantly had the urge to facepalm. A small fight. The deaths of thousands of people and a country's political power were just a small fight in Mu Qinghe's eyes. However, with his status, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with saying this. The battles that Mu Qinghe had experienced were indeed much more dangerous and scary than this. No, Vice Admiral Mu. I think you've misunderstood me. Chu Liyue deliberated before speaking. I'm Prince Li's fiancé, so I'm considered part of the royal family. Now that something like this has happened, how can I just leave? At the very least, I have to wait until everything is settled. Mu Qinghe's expression turned even colder. Time is limited. Leave or stay. Choose one. Chu Liyue was in a dilemma. I must go to the Tianling dynasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I follow Mu Qinghe back, not only will I be able to do it openly, but I can also hide my identity better. Moreover, it was very likely that they would directly come into contact with Jiang Yuqing and the others. Without this layer of relationship, even if she broke through to the 7th stage, entered the Heaven's Canopy and returned to the Tianling dynasty, the situation might not be better than now. But if he left now, what would happen to Rong Xiu? What about father? She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to protect her, but she hadn't explained anything yet. If she left with Mu Qinghe now, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Who knew when he would be able to come back after this trip? Or would he never come back? Chu Liwei pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything for a while. Mu Qinghe, it's been so many years. Why don't you have any tender feelings for the fairer sex? A mocking and casual voice was heard. Chu Liwei looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. As he walked over, he smiled and said, Prince Li and Miss Chu just got engaged. They haven't even held their wedding ceremony yet. If you ask her to go back with you now, wouldn't you be breaking up the couple? It's so far away. It'll be difficult for the couple to see each other in the future. Mu Qinghe turned his face and looked at him expressionlessly. Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Not only did he not stop, but he even walked to Mu Qinghe's side and placed his arm on the latter's shoulder as he smiled charmingly. Anyway, the deadline has passed. The others who should go back have already gone back. It's too late for you to set off now. Why are you nervous for a day or two? In my opinion, why don't you do me a favor? Hey. Just talk. Why do you have to hit me? Jian Fengqi quickly broke free from Mu Qinghe's grip. He rubbed his wrist that was almost hit and took a few steps back. Fine. Anyway, it's your business. No one else can do anything about it, right? It'll be fine if I don't say anything. Chu Liwei was speechless. Jian Fengqi was a head taller than Mu Qinghe. He also looked tall and strong. Why was he so scared? Looking at this scene from the side, it was really strange. However, she quickly focused on some words in Jian Fengqi's sentence. Deadline? Could it be that there was a time limit for Mu Qinghe's trip this time? And why were there other people? It sounded like many people were going out at the same time to complete a mission. Could it be that they were going to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian? Chu Liwei vaguely felt that something was not right. But looking at Mu Qinghe, it was obvious that he would not reveal anything. Mu Qinghe's expression was cold. I have to go back today. Jian Fengqi's expression changed slightly. Because his back was facing Chu Liwei, Chu Liwei did not see the change in his expression. But soon, Jian Fengqi's eyes regained their calmness. He crossed his arms, rubbed his chin and asked tentatively, Why don't you go back first? Why don't you go back first? Once this matter is settled, this young master will personally escort her back. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe immediately said, No. Why not? Isn't this a very good suggestion? Jian Fengqi paused and looked meaningfully at Mu Qinghe. You're busy. You're just wasting time here. Since I'm free, why don't I look after her for a few days? With me around, do you think I'll let her be late? Chu Liu's heart skipped a beat. Late? Was Mu Qinghe looking for her because he was in a hurry to go back? Miss Chu doesn't want to go back now. Isn't it too heartless of you to take her away by force? Jian Fengqi returned to his usual playful tone. But it was clear that he was serious about this proposal. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. After a moment he finally said, 3 days at most. No problem. Jian Fengqi immediately agreed. Then he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chu Liwei. 3 days should be enough, right? Chu Liwei gently nodded. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu, young Master Jian. She had a premonition that this battle would come to a conclusion in 3 days. What she needed to do was to make use of these 3 days to arrange everything properly. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chu Liwei. With a wave of his wrist, something flew out from his sleeve. Chu Liwei immediately caught it and looked down. This is my token. Take this and someone will bring you to me when the time comes. Then he didn't say anything else. With a thought, a long sword flew out and floated in front of him. With a leap, Mu Qinghe turned around and leapt on his sword. He was very fast and he disappeared from Chu Liu's sight in the blink of an eye. Chu Liu knitted his brows. Young Master Jian, did Vice Admiral Mu go back? Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze, and the emotions in his eyes quickly disappeared. He then changed into his usual carefree smile. He has things to do, so you don't have to worry about him. You, on the other hand, just let me know when you're ready. Chu Liu's lips curved up. Thank you, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's smile deepened. Oh right, I heard that Emperor Zhaowen seems to be looking for a bronze cauldron these few days. Is that true? Chapter 443. Chu Liuyue's eyebrows twitched. It seemed that Jian Fengqi hadn't been idle during his stay in the capital. He even knew about this. However, his strength was tyrannical. If he really wanted to investigate something, it was likely that not many people could stop him. Thus, Chu Liyue quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart and nodded honestly. Young Master Jian is well informed. Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. It's a coincidence. I only found out about this by accident. It was on the day that the item was taken away. Chu Liyue's expression instantly froze. Young Master Jian knows who stole the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi's icy eyes flashed with a ripple of light. I said it earlier. I just happened to see it. Of course, that person's face was covered, so I didn't see it clearly. That meant that he really saw it. And it was actually a person. To be able to kill all the guards inside and outside Heptagon Alley in a very short period of time without even giving them the chance to ask for help, it was enough to show that the person must be a top expert. One must know that there were many rank 4 warriors among them. An ordinary rank 5 warrior would never be able to do this. Chu Liyue looked around vigilantly and lowered his voice. I wonder if young Master Jian can tell me in detail what that person looked like? I can only confirm that it was a man and a rank 6 warrior. As for the rest, I'm not sure. Then did you see where that person went with the bronze cauldron? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment and shrugged. I was just surprised that there was another rank 6 warrior here, so I took a second look. Who would care about that bronze cauldron? At that time he didn't know that it was so important. By the time he saw some clues, the other party had already disappeared. Chu Liyue could see that he was telling the truth and could only sigh helplessly. Anyway, thank you. Speaking of which, this matter had nothing to do with Jian Fengqi, so it was normal that he didn't care. However, if you really want to find that person, it's not like I can't help you. Chu Liyue was taken aback. Didn't you say that you didn't see clearly before? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. It seems that young Miss Chu doesn't remember what I do. Celestial physician, celestial physician. You left something on that person? Jian Fengqi knocked her head with his finger. Smart. Chu Liyue. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have dared to be so impudent in front of her. But now it wasn't the time. Why do you want me to help you? In any case, you still have 3 days. You have nothing to do anyway. Seeing Jian Fengqi's expression, Chu Liyue squinted her eyes. This person was still the same as before, eager to see the world in chaos. How was this helping her? He clearly wanted to join in the fun and watch her make a fool of herself. Chu Liyue's lips slowly curved into an extremely sincere smile. Of course. I'll have to trouble you with this matter, young Master Jian. When this matter is over, Liu will definitely reward you handsomely. Jian Fengqi inexplicably shuddered. Chu Liyue, when she smiled, it was exactly the same as that person's. Every time he saw her smile like that, he felt that disaster was about to befall him. He didn't expect that even though that person was already dead, he still subconsciously felt awe when he saw that similar expression. The psychological trauma was really too great. Fine. I'll help you. Jian Fengqi hurriedly looked away and took 2 steps back, sizing up Chu Liyue. In fact, overall, whether it was their facial features or body shape, they didn't look very similar. However, he didn't know why, but when he looked at Chu Liyue, he would think of that person from time to time. He didn't believe that Mu Qinghe didn't have such misconceptions. If you really go there. Jian Fengqi suddenly thought of something and muttered in a low voice. Chu Liyue didn't seem to understand his expression and asked gently, Where are we going? Jian Fengqi pointed in the direction Mu Qinghe left. Do you still remember this young master saying that you somewhat resemble an old friend? Chu Liyue nodded. If they see you, they will definitely be very surprised. Jian Fengqi smiled brightly. He wasn't the only one who had such a psychological trauma. There was nothing to be ashamed of. But Zhang Yuqing and those people, he really didn't know how they would react when they saw Chu Liyue. It would definitely be very exciting. Thinking of that scene, Jian Fengqi felt that his entire body was healed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since you're in such a hurry, I'll help you find him now. Then he took out a small bell. That bell was only the size of a thumb, and it was carved out of blue-green peacock stone. Through the hollow gap, one could see that there seemed to be something gently knocking against the bell, which made a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi focused on listening for a while, and a surprised expression appeared on his face as he looked at Tu Liwei. That person is still in the imperial city. The atmosphere in the palace was even more tense than outside. In a dark dungeon somewhere, Situ Xingqian was locked up again. Blessing Palace had already been burned down, and she was locked up somewhere else this time. However, Emperor Zhaowen specially ordered for more manpower. For 24 hours a day, there were always people guarding within 10 steps of Situ Xingqian, and they guarded her closely. One of Situ Xingqian's arms and legs were crippled, so she could only lie on the floor pathetically. She fainted and woke up a few times. Every time she hoped that she would be in a different place when she opened her eyes. But though, her heart was filled with despair. Even Elder Zhong Yi couldn't save me, let alone the others. I don't know what's going on with father, but there's still no news. I really didn't expect the third prince to really start a rebellion. I wonder if he'll fight his way to the palace. A worried voice could be heard. Situ Xingqian paused and realized that the few people in charge of guarding at the side were softly discussing something. Yeah. No wonder His Majesty was so wary of him previously and even sentenced him to death. It turns out that he already expected this day to come. So what? Didn't he still escape from the execution ground? I heard that there's already a fight outside the city gates. The Northwest Army's people don't care about their lives. They came prepared. From what I see, they have a high chance of winning. That might not be the case. Other than the Imperial Guards in the Imperial City, there are also the elites from the various aristocratic families. How can it be broken so easily? It's a pity that we have to continue guarding here. If not, we can also find a chance to, Before that person could finish his sentence, he suddenly let out a short scream. The remaining people did not even have time to react before their lives were harvested. Situ Xingqian immediately looked up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 444. A man in a long black robe appeared in front of her. The other party was wearing a black and red ghost mask, which almost covered his entire face. She could only see a pair of cold and indifferent brown eyes. He stood there and his entire body was enveloped in an extremely strong suppression. The few people who were still talking previously were all on the floor, motionless and completely dead. The thick smell of blood filled the air. Situ Xingqian held her breath and her hair stood on end. This man is very dangerous. Who are you? She instinctively touched her wrist, but she felt nothing. She then remembered that the bracelet had already been destroyed by Yi Zhiding. Now she had nothing on her that could be used to attack or defend. That man suddenly laughed and his voice was hoarse. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm here to help you. Help me. Situ Xingqian knitted her brows. Who exactly are you? Why are you helping me? She was originally very suspicious, and her experiences over the past few days had almost tortured her to insanity. Hence, when she heard this, she was not happy at all. Instead, she felt even more uneasy. That man did not say anything as he waved his sleeves and a green glow flashed across. A bronze cauldron appeared in front of Situ Xingqian. At the edge, there were still bloodstains that had long since dried up. Situ Xingqian took a closer look and her eyes shrunk. This is clearly the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley. But didn't I lose this thing previously? Why is it in this unfamiliar man's hands? Besides, he actually brought it over. What exactly do you want to do? It took Situ Xingqian a long time to find her voice. After a short silence, that man finally spoke. Don't you know very well what you should do? Situ Xingqian clenched her fists in her sleeves tightly. Don't say that you don't know. I know very well what you want to do. This thing was originally prepared for Rongjin, but it's a pity that that idiot still doesn't know what it is. Hence this belongs to you now. You really want to give this to me? No. It seems like you're not very willing. As the man spoke, he was about to move as if he was planning to retrieve the bronze cauldron. Situ Xingqian immediately shouted. Wait. She endured the pain in her body and limped over. She stared at the bronze vat for a while. What are your conditions? She didn't believe that he would help her for no reason. When the time is right, you will naturally know. The man seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to her and replied impatiently. Situ Xingqian did not dare to ask further as she slowly touched the bronze cauldron. However, just as she was about to touch him, she suddenly stopped and looked at her hand with resentment. It was withered and purplish, looking extremely terrifying. Other external wounds and even internal injuries could be healed in the end. However, the poison that entered the body was not that easy to remove. The more time passed, the more they accumulated. What if she couldn't return to normal after she got out? What should she do? I have a request. Situ Xingqian mustered her courage and asked. My physical body is seriously injured and I've been poisoned. I wonder if you can help me? The man's gaze landed on her hands. Situ Xingqian looked at him nervously. However, the man's tone was nonchalant. No. Then he turned around and left. Situ Xingqian opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, the man's back view had already disappeared. She gritted her teeth. That person is very strong and his background is definitely not ordinary. How can he not do anything about the poison in my body? He just doesn't want to help. Situ Xingqian suppressed her resentment and looked at the bronze cauldron again. The surroundings were dark and the bloodstains at the edges gave off a strange and eerie aura when one looked at them for a long time. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and placed her hands on the bronze cauldron. The moment she touched it, the remaining bloodstains on her hands were instantly absorbed by the bronze cauldron. A strange, blood-red glow shot out from within and completely enveloped Situ Xingqian. Chu Luiwei followed Jian Fengqi all the way. When Chu Luiwei realized that Jian Fengqi was also heading toward the palace, she finally knitted her brows and stopped. Jian Fengqi turned around and looked at her in confusion. What's wrong? Chu Luiwei glanced at the bell in his hands. This is Jian Fengqi's treasure and it almost never makes a mistake. Young Master Jian, that's the palace. Will that person still stay in the palace after stealing that thing? Jian Fengqi squinted his eyes. Do you not believe me? That's not it. Chu Luiwei paused. Just follow me. Don't worry. Since I promised to help you, I'll definitely help you until the end. Upon hearing Jian Fengqi's words, Chu Luiwei felt more at ease and continued to follow him. But when the two of them reached the palace walls and were about to think of a way to enter, Jian Fengqi suddenly raised his brows, placed the bell by his ear and listened carefully. Immediately his expression changed. He doesn't seem to be here anymore. What? Chu Luiwei looked around. At this time no one had passed by this place. Wasn't he here just now? How could he be over there? Jian Fengqi quickly turned around. Chu Luiwei naturally followed without hesitation. But after taking 2 steps she couldn't help but look back and her eyes darkened. After Jian Fengqi had walked for some distance he realized that Chu Luiwei was actually standing there, motionless. Don't you want to track that person down? Jian Fengqi teased. Chu Luiwei shook her head. Then she slowly said, why did that person first come to the palace and then leave? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then suddenly understood. You're saying that he purposely came to the palace? Chu Luiwei looked up and carefully stared at the tall palace walls as if she wanted to see through the walls and see everything that was happening inside. After a moment she finally made up her mind. I want to make a trip to the palace. I have a strong feeling in my heart that that man must have a motive for coming this time. In the palace, the only person closely related to the bronze cauldron is Emperor Zhouan. But just as Chu Luiwei was about to think of a way to enter, she was pulled back by Jian Fengqi. You're going in broad daylight? Chu Luiwei knitted her brows and was about to say something when she suddenly saw a firework appear in the faraway sky. The next moment it suddenly exploded. Bang! A fluttering military flag suddenly bloomed. Chu Luiwei's heart sank. The city gate has been broken. Digression. Later there is another update for mobile users. Please browse and read a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 445. This speed was even faster than Chu Luiwei had expected. I'm afraid that Rongjie will rush into the palace with his men in no time. Chu Luiwei's mind raced as she looked at Jian Fengqi and asked, where's that person? Where did that person go? Jian Fengqi pointed in a direction. Suddenly, the bell in his hand let out a crisp sound. Jian Fengqi instinctively threw the bell out. That item quickly broke into many pieces in midair. Then they all fell to the ground. It actually broke on its own. Jian Fengqi's fingers curled up slightly, and he could still feel a slight numbness on his fingertips. However, his mind was blank at this point. This. Chu Luiyue looked at him in understanding. Young Master Jian, it seems like your tracking skills aren't very good. The other party had clearly discovered me long ago. Jian Fengqi's usual smile had long disappeared, and he looked exceptionally cold and stern. He was clearly traumatized. Chu Luiyue rarely saw Jian Fengqi with such an expression. If she was free, she would definitely be very willing to admire his expression in detail. However, she was not in the mood now. The other party seemed to be targeting Jian Fengqi, but she knew in her heart that the other party's real motive was to lure her here. Every move that he made previously was on purpose. Jian Fengqi harshly closed his eyes. This was a huge humiliation to him. He had never suffered such a loss in all his years of life. You're really fast. If I find out who that person is, I definitely won't let him off. Chu Luiyue was also very curious about that person's identity, but the other party was one step ahead of her, so there was nothing she could do now. Since the other party spent so much effort to lure her here, wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't go in to take a look? Thinking of this, she turned around and left. Jian Fengqi was shocked. Hey, you're going back now? Didn't you want to go in just now? Chu Luiyue nodded. I want to go in. Then it's easy to get into trouble if we go in now. Let's wait for the right time. After saying that, Chu Luiyue's figure quickly disappeared from sight. Jian Fengqi thought that it made sense. He glanced at the blue bell fragments on the ground with heartache and resentment, then turned around and followed Chu Luiyue. At the same time, everyone in the imperial capital saw the military flag and realized that the city gate had been breached. In the palace, Emperor Zhouwen, a few family heads and other important people in the imperial court were all gathered at Qingqian Hall. Everyone was originally discussing how to deal with the Northwest Army's attack, but the loud noise from outside finally silenced the noisy Qingqian Hall. Everyone seemed to have sensed something and their expressions froze on their faces. Sure enough, someone came to report. Your Majesty, the city gate had been breached. The third prince has already led thousands of rebel soldiers into the imperial capital. The imperial capital was backed by a mountain range, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The only way to break through was from the direction of the city gate. But now Rongjiu actually took such a short time to bring people in. First they broke through the city gate. Soon they would break through the palace gate. Everyone in the hall looked at Emperor Zhouwen and the surroundings were silent. Emperor Zhouwen was furious. Useless. The number of imperial guards is almost twice that of the rebel soldiers. How did this happen? The person who came to report could only speak with a trembling voice. Your Majesty, they seem to be very familiar with the imperial capital's military arrangements. That's why Officer Zhao Ming and the rest couldn't. The crowd looked at each other. The imperial capital's military arrangements were top secret, and not many people knew about it. How did Rongjiu get his hands on it? Digression. Tomorrow at 6:00 p.m., please browse for a better reading experience from Yuan. Chapter 446. Also, many aristocratic families in the imperial city seem to have submitted to the third prince. That person continued stuttering. Emperor Zhouwen froze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. What do you mean? That person boldly looked up and scanned the surroundings before quickly looking down. Those aristocratic families' heads seemed to have discussed this with the third prince. After the rebel army entered the imperial city, they didn't meet with any obstructions. Actually, Emperor Zhouwen understood the meaning of this the moment he heard this. However, he felt that it was too ridiculous. As a result, he subconsciously didn't dare to believe it. There was dead silence in the palace. Emperor Zhouwen's vision turned black. How is that possible? I single-handedly supported all these aristocratic families. I definitely won't. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly thought of something and suddenly looked at the crowd standing in the palace. Someone among you has long betrayed me. One had to know that most of the aristocratic families' heads in the imperial city were standing here. If Rongjiu brought the soldiers in without any obstructions, it meant that someone had instructed him to do so. What responded to him was even scarier silence. It's you? Or all of you? Emperor Zhouwen didn't expect the situation to change so drastically. No wonder Rongjio was so presumptuous. It turned out that he was fully prepared. So many people secretly betrayed him, but he didn't know it all. Who exactly is it? Emperor Jiawen suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Your Majesty, calm down first. I guarantee with my life that the Si family didn't betray you. Si stepped forward and said solemnly. Previously, when Rongjio escaped from the execution ground, he couldn't find him for a long time. When he heard that Rongjio had successfully reached the city gates, he returned to the palace to ask for forgiveness. He didn't expect things to become like this in such a short time. Your Majesty, the same goes for the Chu family. Chu Shao hurriedly said to express his loyalty. Ever since he was harshly scolded in the imperial study, Chu Shao never came again. Today he finally had the chance, so he naturally had to suck up to the emperor. Then a few people spoke up one after another. However, the Gu family and the Lu family of the four major families didn't say anything. Emperor Jiawen was so angry that his entire body trembled. Did the remaining people who didn't say anything already submit to that bastard? Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded from outside the hall. Imperial Father, haven't you already seen the situation clearly? Why bother to get to the bottom of this? It would only make his face even uglier. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up and saw a team of soldiers rapidly approaching the palace. Then they separated into two sides. A murderous figure walked out from within. It was Rongjio. Not long ago he was still dressed in prison clothes, battered and exhausted, waiting for the guillotine to fall. But now he was clad in armor, leading his soldiers in an aggressive manner. Finally he stood outside the main hall. He looked at Emperor Jiawen fixedly. Imperial Father, how have you been? Fear finally surfaced in Emperor Jiawen's heart. Men, protect the emperor. Chu Shao immediately led the others and rushed forward. But before she could stabilize herself, she heard Rongjio lightly say, "Don't worry. I do not wish to implicate the innocent. As long as you surrender now, I guarantee that I will not touch your family members." Chu Shao immediately shouted loudly, "Let's go. This is treason. It was a serious crime. His Majesty is the only emperor. Rongjio, you're only digging your own grave by doing this." "Oh? Really?" Rongjio raised the padao in his hands and slowly wiped away the bloodstain on it. "First Elder Chu, you probably don't know that the entire imperial city is under Ai's control, right?" Chu Zhao's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Rongjio and felt uneasy. Could it be that Rongjio will really win this time? At the side, Si coldly said, "Rongjio. Rongjio, you killed the empress and want to rebel now. You deserve to be killed." As he spoke, his body's force surged and he planned to take action. Rongjio chuckled. "I do hate the empress, but the one who killed her is someone else." Si was dazed. "You're lying." His Majesty said it himself, and he had also investigated in private. The guards outside the empress's palace that day all pointed to Rongjio killing the empress. How could someone else do it? "I have already brought the soldiers here. What's there to lie about?" Rongjio looked at Si sarcastically. "You should ask father about the truth of the matter." Si was dazed. Rongjio does make sense. He even started a rebellion, so why wouldn't he admit to killing the empress? Unless he really didn't do it. Si stiffened his neck and turned to look at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen harshly said, "Elder Yi. Where's Elder Yi?" Such a big thing happened in the palace, but Elder Yi still hasn't appeared. At this point, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that Elder Yi, who had been guarding Elder Zong Yi, had also met with some trouble. Seeing that there was no hope of saving Elder Yi, Emperor Jiawen thought of something. Deep Xian Formation. The Deep Xian Formation was country Yao Chen's palace's defense formation, but he just remembered that the Deep Xian Formation wasn't activated when Rongjio and the rest barged in. Rongjio said, "Oh right. Oh that's right. I forgot to tell you that the Deep Xian Formation is also under my control. If you want to take a look, I'll personally send you there. How about that?" Emperor Jiawen felt like he had fallen into an ice hole. Then he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Shao, who was standing at the side, had a few drops of blood on him. He wanted to reach out to help him up, but when he thought of what Rongjio said previously, he suddenly felt afraid and took a step back. How could the others not understand at this point? They naturally avoided him. Emperor Jiawen's hands trembled as he pointed at Rongjio. "Why, Rongju lifted his chin and his expression was cold. It seems like father's body isn't too good. You should rest properly. As he spoke, he raised his hand. Someone come and send father to Qinghe Palace to rest. Emperor Jiawen immediately shouted. How dare you? Rongjiu clearly wants to imprison me. He clenched his teeth. Rongjiu, don't think that I can't do anything to you. Before he could finish his sentence, a huge commotion came from outside. A cold and gloomy aura quickly spread out. Emperor Jiawen suddenly looked up. In that direction, is where Situ Xingqian is being locked up. The most important thing is that this aura. Someone touched the bronze cauldron. He didn't even think about it and immediately rushed outside. But before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by someone. Emperor Jiawen's face flushed red. Let me go over. Rongjiu, do you know what that is? Let me go over immediately. If not, you'll definitely regret it. The moment he finished his sentence, Hong, a greenish-red pillar of light shot up to the sky. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 447. Dark clouds rumbled and heaven and earth darkened. That light pillar went straight for the sky and into the clouds. From afar it looked like it connected heaven and earth. On top of it, the green and red lights intertwined, forming a strange pattern that made one fearful. Rongjiu turned around to take a look and he looked serious. Wei Lin, immediately send someone to check. What exactly is going on? Yes. Everyone in the hall also looked over with different expressions. Taking advantage of this short gap, Emperor Jiawen suddenly turned around and rushed back. I must be quick. But Rongjiu quickly detected this movement and turned around to look coldly. What are you all waiting for? The people at the side immediately reacted and rushed forward to stop Emperor Jiawen again. This time, Emperor Jiawen's hands were tied up and he couldn't move. Rongjiu. Emperor Jiawen was furious and his face flushed red. Rongjiu waved his hands. Aren't you going to send father to rest? A few soldiers immediately walked over and escorted Emperor Jiawen away. Eunuch Min and a few other servants who served him were also taken away. At the start, Emperor Jiawen was still scolding Rongjiu. But when his figure disappeared through the side door, his voice suddenly disappeared, leaving only faint sounds of struggling as if his mouth was stuffed. The crowd looked at one another. At this point it was clear who had won and who had lost. Emperor Jiawen, who was high and mighty a moment ago, was locked up in the blink of an eye. Even though Rongjiu didn't directly kill him, Emperor Jiawen's future days wouldn't be good. The entire palace was so quiet that it was suffocating. Rongjiu's gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on Siyi for a moment. Siyi's entire body tensed up. Even though the Si family was the head of the 4 major families, it clearly wasn't a wise move to go against the current Rongjiu. Si family head, I'll have to trouble you to accompany father during this period of time. Siyi's heart sank. Is Rongjiu planning to put me under house arrest? Third prince. Before Siyi could finish his sentence, Rongjiu nonchalantly interrupted him and slowly said, You're not the only one. Don't worry, as long as you take good care of father, I will naturally take good care of everyone in the Si family. This was a blatant threat. Siyi's heart surged with anger, but he suppressed it in the end and said word by word, Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble your highness. Then he turned around and walked in the direction that Emperor Jiawen left in. Several officers and soldiers followed closely behind. Everyone exchanged glances privately. Seems like Rongjiu still has a grudge against the empress. Besides, Siyi was the one who sent Rongjiu to the execution ground. The Si family's situation naturally wouldn't be any better. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen and Siyi had already been dealt with, Chu Xiao was filled with regret. If he had known earlier, he definitely wouldn't have stood out. Now Rongjiu will definitely remember this in his heart. As expected, Rongjiu's gaze landed on him. Great Elder Chu. Chu Xiao shuddered as he looked at Rongjiu fearfully. Third Highness, you're very loyal to father. Why, aren't you going together? Chu Xiao's legs turned to jelly and he immediately said, Your Highness, you're mistaken. Especially just now. Rongjiu's gaze was filled with unconcealed mockery. Chu Xiao's heart skipped a beat and he seemed to be choking on something. His face flushed red and white and he wanted to defend himself again. However, under such a mocking gaze he seemed to be a joke. Great Elder Chu, please. The soldier at the side had already spoken first. Sensing their terrifying murderous intent, Chu Shao clenched and loosened his fists. In the end he could only leave with them. Then the other people who previously stood on Emperor Zhouwen's side were brought away. After a short silence, someone mustered his courage and spoke. Congratulations, Hong Long. Before he could say anything to curry favor, another loud sound came from the sky. Rongjio took a deep breath in, turned around and looked over. Wei Lin had already returned. Rongjio asked, "Where did that light pillar come from?" Wei Lin's expression was very solemn. "Your Highness, it seems to have come from Taiyuan Palace." Rongjio knitted his brows. "Hasn't nobody been living there since a long time ago? Have you found out who caused such a commotion there?" Wei Lin paused before saying, "Your Highness. Your Highness, I'm useless. The outside of Taiyuan Palace is covered by a barrier. Outsiders can't get close to it and they can't see the situation inside. I tried to enter 3 times but I didn't succeed." Rongjio was slightly shocked. Wei Lin is a stage 5 warrior and he's very capable. If even he can't break the barrier, bring I there. When the light pillar shot up to the sky, Elder Yi and Elder Zhong Yi, who were in a stalemate, also felt the strong ripple in another hidden dungeon in the palace. Upon hearing the loud sound, the two of them were stunned. There aren't many people in the entire country Yaochen who can cause such a commotion. Also, it sounds like it's not far from the palace. The two of them held their breaths and focused as they felt the sinister ripple. Suddenly, Elder Yi was shocked. The commotion seems to be coming from where Situ Xingqian is locked up. Most importantly, this aura. Elder Yi had a terrifying and absurd conjecture in his heart. Then he turned around and quickly left. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding actually left just like that? What exactly is so urgent that he actually gave up on guarding me? Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi quickly broke free from the cage and followed him. The moment Elder Yi came out, he was stunned by the huge light pillar that connected heaven and earth. He froze on the spot and didn't recover his senses for a long time. Indeed. Someone still touched the bronze cauldron. Elder Zhong Yi, who quickly rushed out, was also shocked when he saw this scene. However, he was more confused. Yi Zhiding is considered someone who has seen many big scenes. What exactly is it that can make him reveal such an expression? However, this question didn't linger in his heart for long. To him, the most important thing now was to find Situ Xingqian and bring her away. Even though the bracelet was destroyed, he was very familiar with Situ Xingqian's aura. As long as she was still in the palace, he could still find her quickly. Thinking of this, Elder Zhong Yi closed his eyes and searched carefully. After a moment, he opened his eyes and deep shock flashed across his eyes. Situ Xingqian seems to be at the spot where the light pillar came from. On the other end, Chu Luiwei and Jian Fengqi also entered the palace amidst the chaos when Rongjio led the soldiers into the palace. Luckily, everyone's attention was on Rongjio and the rest. In addition, the duo was good at hiding their figures, so their journey was smooth. Until they saw the terrifying light pillar. Jian Fengqi knitted his brows. "What's that? It's so eerie." Chu Luiwei didn't have any expression on his face. "I'm still a step too late." "What?" Jian Fengqi was about to ask again when a figure suddenly rushed out of the light pillar. "Digression. Trash computer ruining my time and slowing me down. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 448. Under the light, that person's figure was a little blurry, but Chu Luiwei still recognized her. That person was Situ Xingqian. When she flew to the middle of the light pillar, she finally stopped. Then the surrounding heaven and earth force crazily surged into her body. A few energy whirlpools rapidly appeared around her. Even the pattern on the pillar of light seemed to distort. Chu Luiwei stared at Situ Xingqian's figure closely. As the energy surged in, her aura kept strengthening. What's going on?" Jian Fengqi muttered and nudged Chu Luiwei with his elbow. "Hey, do you know what she's doing? You were referring to this when you said you were one step too late?" Chu Luiwei didn't say anything, but many thoughts surfaced in his mind. That bronze cauldron must be with Situ Xingqian. And it's obvious that she's already activated it. She used the energy inside. She was just a stage 3 warrior previously, but not long after she's about to break through to stage 4. I have to think of a way to stop her. Jian Fengqi stared at it a few more times and knitted his brows. This thing is a little strange. Don't you sense a bloody smell? Chu Liyue coldly said, the bronze cauldron contains the blood of the bronze cauldron. The bronze cauldron contains the power and blood essence of several hundred cultivators. It's not strange for it to smell like this. Jian Fengqi's expression changed. He was a celestial physician and had killed and saved countless people. But when he heard Chu Liyue's words, he still felt disgusted. As long as he used his brain to think, he would know what kind of scene it would be. It turns out that the bronze cauldron is such an evil item. In that case, the energy in this light pillar was actually snatched from those people. But the energy accumulated through such means is mottled and messy, and it might even conflict with each other. Once one absorbs this energy, even though it can raise one's cultivation level in the short term, it will greatly affect one's future cultivation. Who's so brainless to do such a thing? He naturally didn't recognize Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue pursed her lips tightly. How could Situ Xingqian not know what Jian Fengqi said? But she still chose to do it. Suddenly, Chu Liyue sensed a strange fluctuation coming from the Qiankuan bag. She carefully examined it and discovered that the commotion actually came from a wooden box. That wooden box happened to be the one I got from Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue looked up again and frowned. The movement of the wooden box seemed to have been caused by the light pillar. Inside the wooden box was a roll of parchment. There was a layer of seal on it, and even now she had not been able to break it. Previously she had thought of many ways to open it, but none of them succeeded, so she put it aside for the time being. Who would have thought that it was related to the bronze cauldron? In midair, Situ Xingqian was still rapidly absorbing the surrounding energy, and her aura was clearly becoming stronger. Following this change, Chu Liyue clearly felt that the movement in the wooden box was gradually expanding. Jian Fengqi then realized that Chu Liyue's expression was amiss. What's wrong with you? Chu Liyue shook her head. From what Emperor Zhouwen said previously, she could guess that the Empress specially prepared the bronze cauldron for Rongjin to help him improve his cultivation level. She vaguely guessed that Emperor Zhouwen knew something, but she didn't say it. She originally planned to carefully check the item after finding it, but she was one step too late as Situ Xingqian beat her to it. Once it's opened, the energy in the bronze cauldron will definitely be absorbed and turned into Situ Xingqian's energy. But now it seems like things are more troublesome than expected. What are you looking at? Hurry up and leave. Suddenly, an impatient scolding came from the side. Chu Liyue quickly turned around and saw a group of people walking over. Her figure moved and she quickly hid in the corner at the side. Upon seeing this, Jian Fengqi also hid. The group of people walked closer and closer. Chu Liyue then clearly saw that the person being scolded in the middle was actually Emperor Zhouwen. Behind him were Eunuch Min and the others, and they all seemed to have suffered. He was surrounded by soldiers in red armor. They were Rongjiu's men. Emperor Zhouwen had already changed out of his dragon robe, and he looked a little disheveled. If one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. He looked anxious as he kept turning his head to look at the green and red light pillars as if he wanted to say something. It was a pity that his mouth was sealed so he could only make muffled sounds. He couldn't hear anything clearly. The soldiers at the side pushed and shoved him, rushing him forward. Emperor Zhouwen kept struggling, until the person at the side pulled out a sword, pressed it against his waist and hollered. "We have plenty of ways to make you obedient. Why don't you try?" Emperor Zhouwen finally stopped, and despair flashed across his eyes as he stumbled forward with them. Very quickly, these people walked past Chu Liyue and Jian Fengqi and headed in a certain direction. Chu Liyue's eyes sparkled and she planned to follow them. Jian Fengqi pulled her back. "Where are you going?" Chu Liyue glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. "If you want to follow me, go ahead. If you don't want to, you can walk on your own." Jian Fengqi was stumped. Wasn't this girl always polite to him before? Why did she suddenly have such an attitude? He was about to retort when he met her clear eyes. He suddenly felt guilty and softly muttered, "Go ahead. So be it. Why are you so angry? Why is Chu Liyue's temper so bad? My status is clearly much higher than hers, but why do I feel like I'm lower than her?" Just as he was wondering if the problem was with him, Chu Liyue had already left with those people. Jian Fengqi could only follow. Those people brought Emperor Zhouwen to Qinghe Hall. Emperor Zhouwen was locked in a room alone, and the others were locked at the side. The doors and windows were tightly locked and there were people guarding every corner. Luckily there weren't many people. Actually, Rongjio was still wary of Emperor Joan, but the entire imperial city was under his control now. After enduring for so many years, he finally succeeded and he was in a good mood, so he naturally let down his guard. In addition, Situ Xingshan's commotion distracted part of his attention. This made things convenient for Chu Liyue. After observing for a while, she sent Dumpling out. Dumpling was small and fast, so she quickly caused a commotion and attracted the attention of two guards. Taking advantage of the time when they left to check, Chu Liyue quickly entered the hall. Hong! Another thunderous sound was heard. Chu Liyue turned around and saw that Situ Xingshan had actually become a stage 4 warrior. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 449. However, Situ Xingshan didn't stop there. Instead, she started to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force at an even faster speed. It was obvious that the greenish-red pillar of light contributed greatly. Chu Liyue knitted her brows as she looked at the rumbling dark clouds in the sky and the lightning that flashed from time to time. Generally speaking, such a phenomenon would only appear when a rare treasure appeared in the world. For a cultivator to cause such a huge commotion, they had to at least break through to become a stage 5 warrior. One had to know that when Chu Ning recovered from his old injuries and broke through to become a stage 5 warrior, it wasn't like this at all. If this continued, Situ Xingshan would most likely continue to break through. The wooden box in the cosmic bag was also vibrating more and more. Chu Liyue almost couldn't ignore it anymore. She even felt that there was something in the wooden box that wanted to rush out. At this point, Emperor Joan heard the commotion and suddenly turned his head. Chu Liyue immediately hid behind the study table. At this point, Emperor Joan was distracted, and his remaining rationality and attention were all placed on the pillar of light outside. He didn't even notice Chu Liyue. He slowly walked to the window, which was locked from the outside and couldn't be opened. Hence he couldn't see the situation outside. He could only see the light reflected on the window. How can this be? How can this be? Emperor Joan was dazed as he softly muttered. Rua, I've let you down in the end. Chu Liyue was dazed. Rua? Isn't this Consort 1 back then, Rongxiu's birth mother? What does Emperor Joan mean by saying this at this time? Also, it sounds like there's deep regret and self-blame in his voice. Rumor has it that Emperor Joan only doted on Consort 1 back then, and the harem of 3,000 people couldn't compare to her. However, not long after Consort 1 gave birth to Rongxiu, she had a huge fight with Emperor Joan. She then directly moved out of the palace and went to Tianlu Academy. After staying in the academy for 2 years, she passed away. It's normal that Emperor Joan can't forget her, but why did he mention her at this time? At this moment, Emperor Joan removed something from his neck. Because he was facing Chu Liyue from his side, Chu Liyue could only see a rough outline, but could not see clearly what it was. You're still blaming me? Is it because I was wrong that I ended up like this? Emperor Joan muttered softly as he looked at the item in his hands. He seemed to be smiling and crying at the same time. Shortly after, the item in his hand suddenly glowed with a faint light. Like a stream of water, it flowed along Emperor Joan's arm and spread to his entire body. Very quickly, Emperor Joan's entire body was enveloped in that strange light. Chu Liyue's pupils shrank. This was because Emperor Joan's aura was gradually becoming stronger. However, that power was clearly gushing out from his own body. A strange pattern suddenly appeared above his head. Chu Liyue took a quick look and realized that the pattern was exactly the same as the pattern on the green-red light pillar outside. But in comparison, the one above Emperor Joan's head looked much more normal, unlike the one outside that was filled with a strange and eerie aura. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the pattern. Following the crack, Emperor Joan's aura became even stronger. Chu Liyue finally realized something. There's a seal in Emperor Joan's body. Now he seems to be planning to break that seal. It's obvious that Emperor Joan's abilities aren't as ordinary as they seem on the surface. Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something and his heart harshly skipped a beat. If the pattern that appeared above Emperor Joan's head was a seal, what about the one outside? Hong Long. A snake-like bolt of lightning shuttled through the thick black clouds and finally struck the light pillar. Crackle. Following this ear-piercing sound, A crack appeared in the middle of the strange pattern on the pillar of light. But as the light pillar kept flashing and the pattern was pulled until it almost changed shape, almost nobody noticed this change. Most people's attention was on Situ Xingchen, who was in the middle of the light pillar. Rongjiu stared at her closely. Actually, he had already recognized that person as Situ Xingchen. It seems like she has been locked up in the palace previously, but for some reason she suddenly started to break through. The aura on the light pillar is the same as the bronze cauldron. Your Highness, what should we do? The crowd behind him exchanged glances. Should we just let it go like this? But it seems like we can't go near to stop it. Rongjiu boomed, seal the gates. Be prepared to activate the Deep Shen formation at any time. Everyone was shocked. Your Highness, activating the Deep Shen formation requires a lot of manpower and resources. It seems a little overboard to deal with a stage 4 warrior. One of the patriarchs asked tentatively. Rongjiu turned around and sneered. It seems like family head Su is willing to take the lead? That person's expression changed and he hurriedly shook his head. What a joke. The aura on the light pillar is so dangerous. Even a stage 5 warrior like Wei Lin can't do anything about it, let alone the others. Since no one wants to go, immediately go down and prepare the Deep Shen formation. Rongjiu hollered and that person was shocked. He didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly left. Very quickly the people at the side also followed him. Rongjiu looked at Situ Xingchen again and suddenly thought of something. Where's Elder Yi now? At this point, Elder Yi was fighting with Elder Zhongyi again. After coming out he planned to stop Situ Xingchen, but Elder Zhongyi blocked his way. The two of them were equally skilled. Without a burden, Elder Zhongye's combat ability was much stronger than before. Hence after a few moves the two of them were still tied. Seeing that Situ Xingchen had already broken through and was planning to continue, Elder Yi became increasingly anxious. Zhongyi, do you know what your precious niece is doing? Elder Zhongyi sneered. Isn't it very clear what she's doing? If you want to stop this great opportunity, you'll have to get past me first. That light pillar contained immense strength, and Situ Xingchen had already successfully broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 4 warrior. Not long later she might even break through to a stage 5 warrior. Situ Xingchen was very talented as a celestial physician, but her progress as a warrior was mediocre. As long as she grasped this opportunity well, she would definitely be 100 times stronger than before. Elder Yi was enraged. This idiot actually thought that Situ Xingchen was lucky enough to obtain this opportunity. He even hoped that she would continue to break through and become a top warrior. He really can't be saved. Since that's the case, I won't stop her. Just wait here and see if she'll become a top warrior in the end. Digression. There are 2 more updates at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 450. Elder Zhongye's heart was beating like a drum. He was a rank 6 warrior and could naturally feel that something was wrong with the aura in the light pillar. Seeing Elder Yi in such a state, he became even more worried. However, since he had already said so earlier, it was naturally inappropriate for him to go back on his word. Thinking that Situ Xingchen always knew her limits, he felt more at ease and tried to defend himself. Outsiders like you don't need to worry about this. After saying that, he looked at the pillar of light. At this point, Situ Xingchen's aura had already broken through to the intermediate stage 4 stage. And it was still growing stronger. Elder Zhongyi was half excited and half worried. However, he didn't notice that Elder Ye's eyes flashed with shock when he saw a crack appear on the pattern on the pillar of light. Situ Xingchen's breakthrough speed was faster than he expected. The power within the bronze cauldron was still gushing out. If this continued, things would only get more and more out of hand. Oh right, an Emperor Zhaoan. Thinking of this, old man Yi turned to leave. Elder Zhongye's eyes were sharp and his hands were nimble. He once again stood in front of him and asked with extreme vigilance, "Where are you going?" Elder Ye's eyes darkened. "Zhongyi, I've already said that I won't stop Situ Xingchen. You better get out of the way now." However, Elder Zhongyi did not believe him at all. Who knew what tricks Yi Zhiding would come up with to deal with him and Xingchen? No matter what, you have to stay here. You can't go anywhere until it's over. Elder Zhongyi sneered. The two of us are evenly matched. Even if I can't take you down, it won't be that easy for you to leave either. Elder Yi was so angry that he almost cursed. He wanted to smash open Zhong Ye's brain to see if it was filled with water. Zhong Yi, don't push your luck. Elder Zhong Yi shrugged. It was clear that he wanted to fight him to the end. Unlike the chaotic palace, the Prince Li's mansion was completely quiet at this moment. Rong Xiu stood in the courtyard, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed in the direction of the palace. He raised his eyebrows when he saw the pattern on it start to crack. Umo, who was standing behind him, couldn't help but ask. Master, it seems like Situ Xingqian's ambition is greater than expected. She actually used such a short time to break through to this stage. His limbs were crippled, his origin power sealed, and all the humiliation he's suffered in the past few days. Anyone would have done the same. Not to mention her? Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Umo thought the same. Situ Xingqian isn't a kind person. Judging from the recent events, this woman is clearly the kind of person who will do anything to achieve her goals. Not to mention that she didn't know the other secret hidden in the bronze cauldron. Even if she knew, she might still try her luck. Third brother, what's your plan? Rong Xiu asked calmly. Umo immediately said, Third Highness, prepare to activate the dark mysterious formation. But for some reason there was no movement at all. Third Imperial brother, when you are on the battlefield, you have always been particular about knowing the enemy and yourself, and you will never be defeated. Now he probably doesn't know what Situ Xingqian wants to do, so he's planning to wait and see. Naturally, he won't act rashly. Besides, he had just taken over the imperial city and was only one step away from the throne. He would naturally be very careful. A smile flashed across Rong Xiu's eyes. Actually, Rong Xiu is very outstanding in all aspects. There's nothing wrong with this idea. However, he didn't know that time wouldn't wait for anyone. If he wanted to wait until he was fully prepared before taking action, it might already be too late. Master, are you not planning to interfere? Asked Umo curiously. Rong Xiu squinted his eyes. Why do I have to do something unnecessary? This way it would save him a lot of trouble. Umo respectfully answered. A ripple suddenly appeared in the air. Umo turned around and saw Enchanting, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, walking out. He looked like he had rushed back and was covered in dust. Greetings, Master. Enchanting knelt on one knee and presented a letter with both hands. Rong Xiu looked at the letter calmly. Master, that side can't hold on for much longer. 36 Respected Elder Feng personally wrote a letter to ask you to go back as soon as possible. Hearing 36 Respected Elder Feng, Umo's eyelids twitched. That person actually came out personally? It can be seen that the situation over there isn't optimistic. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Master hasn't gone back in such a long time. Rong Xiu picked up the letter. The moment it touched his fingertips, the letter instantly turned into a ray of light. It flew in front of Rong Xiu. Then the ray of light turned into a circular light screen. A blurry silhouette appeared on top of it. Your Highness, are you really not planning to come back? A low and gentle voice came from within. It was like a gentle breeze that made one feel as if they were bathed in the spring breeze. Umo suddenly shivered as he exchanged glances with Enchanting. They both saw the fear in each other's eyes. This person actually used such a voice to speak. It's over. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed slightly, but the corners of his lips still held a light smile. Respected Elder, you've misunderstood. I will go back in a few days. That's good. The voice was still gentle and even had a hint of a smile. It's good. Your Highness hasn't returned for a long time. Everyone thought that you died outside. Rong Xiu's eyelids twitched violently. Digression. There's another update later. Go to bed early. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 451. Umo and Enchanting both held their breaths and didn't dare to make a sound. If they could, they really wanted to disappear from here right now. There weren't many people in the world who dared to be so rude to His Highness, and this person was one of them. However, he had never said such words in the past. It could be seen that he was furious this time. Rong Xiu coughed. Respected Elder, you're joking. It's good that Your Highness knows. That voice sounded a little fierce, but Enchanting and Umo both heaved a sigh of relief. In this case, they could at least muddle through, right? I heard that Your Highness stayed there for so long this time because of a woman? Rong Xiu's brows moved slightly and he glanced at Yenqing from the corner of his eyes. Yenqing opened her mouth. It wasn't Yenqing who said it. That elder sneered. It's just this old man's guess. However, it seems that I guessed it right. Rong Xiu paused for a moment and nodded lightly. That's right. 36 respected elder Ming was caught off guard by his frank admission. Your Highness has never been close to women. Why did you suddenly become enlightened after going out? The anger from before disappeared and was replaced by curiosity and ridicule. I wonder what kind of woman can make your Highness like this. It seems that those old fellows still don't know about this? Rong Xiu said honestly. Yes. I haven't returned yet, so it's not appropriate to make it public now. When I return, I will naturally mention this matter personally. These words made the elder in the light screen silent for a while. Your Highness intends to give her a status? Rong Xiu smiled. She's Ai's wife. Naturally, she has to have a status. What? That elder was shocked and lost his voice. Even the originally blurry figure trembled. Your Highness intends to, but she probably hasn't even entered heaven's canopy before, right? How could those old fellows agree to a woman with such a background? Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Didn't you agree just like that? This old man is. How can that group of people be compared to this old man? The old man said angrily. Is your Highness looking down on this old man? Since that woman was chosen by your Highness, this old man naturally trusts her. Moreover, the person who could make His Highness put in so much effort must be someone that His Highness had in mind. Why would this old man object? No wonder His Highness took so long to come back. However, since you were prepared, why did you take so long? At the end of his sentence, the old man's tone was filled with disdain. Rong Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't worry, I know what to do. I'll be back in a few days. If anything happens over there, please take care of it for the time being. The old man smacked his lips twice. This old man has always been impatient with such things. This time, for the sake of His Highness's marriage, I'll just agree. However, when His Highness returns, this old man wants to be the first to see that woman. A glimmer flashed across Rong Xiu's deep eyes. I'm afraid you'll have to wait for a while. This time she won't be returning with I. What? She won't be coming back with you. The old man was shocked. He was already thinking of what gift to give her. Why did he say that she wouldn't be coming? Wait. Don't tell me she hasn't taken a liking to you. Rong Xiu, Yenqing and Umo both shrunk their necks and wished they could find a hole to hide in. They really didn't want to hear this conversation at all. Rong Xiu took a deep breath. You don't have to worry about this. She'll be returning to heaven's canopy soon and has some matters to attend to. When she's done, you'll naturally have a chance to see her. The old man's interest was immediately piqued. She came to heaven's canopy but didn't come with you? Then where did she go? What did she do? Rong Xiu refused to say more. You'll know all this when it's time. Seeing that Rong Xiu wasn't willing to reveal anything, the old man didn't continue asking. Since this is the case, I hope you'll return soon. After saying that, the light screen quickly dissipated. Rong Xiu lightly sighed. This time it had indeed dragged on for too long. Even 36 respected elder Ming personally wrote a letter. He thought for a moment and asked, What's the matter? What's Mu Qinghe up to today? Umo immediately said, Earlier he went to Ms. Lu Yu's place and left. Rong Xiu's expression turned serious. At this time Mu Qinghe went to find her. Where's he now? Umo was dazed and his expression suddenly changed. According to the previous rules, the people sent to monitor Mu Qinghe had to report to him every once in a while. However, there didn't seem to be any news today. I've been by Rong Xiu's side and only cared about Rong Jiu's matters, so I actually forgot about this. Umo knelt down with a thud. I've neglected my duty. Master, please punish me. Rong Xiu had long realized something when he saw Umo's expression. He knitted his brows. No need. Seems like he left today. Mu Qinghe isn't a simple person. It's impossible for him not to know that someone is secretly monitoring him. There must be a reason why he took action today. Where's Yu? Asked Rong Xiu immediately. Umo's heart skipped a beat. Rong Xiu closed his eyes. After a moment he opened them and looked in a certain direction. That's where the palace is. She actually entered the palace. He looked at the light pillar that connected the heavens and the earth. As time passed, the light pillar's color seemed to have faded a lot. However, Situ Xingqian's aura was much stronger than before. The most important thing was that many cracks had already appeared on the strange pattern on the light pillar. Rong Xiu's eyes darkened. The next moment, another bolt of lightning struck down. That pattern was finally completely torn apart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 452. Rong Xiu's figure moved and he rapidly disappeared from the yard. Mo and Yanqing looked at each other and followed him. As the strange pattern cracked, Situ Xingqian officially broke through and became a stage 5 warrior. Seeing that the light pillar didn't show any signs of disappearing and that Situ Xingqian, who was suspended in it, was still absorbing the surrounding heaven and earth force, Rong Xiu finally realized that something was amiss. If this continues, who knows if Situ Xingqian will continue to break through. He looked at Wei Lin. Have you found Elder Yi? Wei Lin shook his head. Rong Xiu pondered for a moment. Give the order to activate the Deep Shen formation. Upon hearing this, the crowd standing at the back looked at each other. Nobody expected Rong Xiu to use the Deep Shen formation, which Emperor Jiawen didn't have the time to activate, to deal with Situ Xingqian. Yes. Wei Lin quickly left with the others. The waiting time was always very unbearable. After around 15 minutes, a ripple finally came from the northwest corner of the palace. A star gradually appeared in midair. Following that, more and more dots of light appeared around the starlight. In the blink of an eye, they connected together. It was like a small galaxy. Almost at the same time, the same scene was happening in the other 3 directions. All the light spots gathered in the middle. It was as if there was an invisible hand connecting the 4 pieces of starlight together. Hong. When everything gathered together, it finally made a loud sound. It was like a gigantic star net that covered the entire palace. A vast suppression descended. The greenish-red light pillar was also suppressed by this force and started to shrink toward the center. At this point, Situ Xingqian suddenly opened her eyes. That pair of eyes that were always filled with water, were now filled with a scarlet red. Brutal and cold murderous intent crazily surged out from the depths of her eyes. She looked at her wrists and ankles. With the help of that force, all her physical injuries had healed, and her cultivation level had also directly broken through from a stage 3 warrior to a stage 5 warrior. She slowly clenched her fists and felt the abundant strength in her body. She was elated. Previously she was still a little hesitant, but it now seemed like her decision was right. Not to mention country Yaochen, even in the entire world, how many people could break through to this level in such a short period of time? Most importantly, the energy in the bronze cauldron had not been completely exhausted. In other words, her strength would continue to rise. She raised her head and saw that the pillar of light seemed to be gradually shrinking. She smiled coldly. Then she clasped her hands together and the force around her surged wildly. In an instant the wind howled. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The pillar of light that entered the clouds suddenly fell down like a waterfall. Those dazzling rays of light, along with an incomparably valiant power, madly surged into her body. Intense pain came from every part of his body. Situ Xingqian saw a few small wounds on her hand bursting open and sticky, sweet blood slowly seeped out. However, she gritted her teeth and did not stop. Only in this way would he be able to break through faster. As long as she could endure this pain, she would become a top expert in the world. Very quickly, Rong Xiu and the rest saw the light pillar, which seemed to connect heaven and earth, rapidly decrease in size. Situ Xingqian's body was like a black hole as it crazily swallowed the light. The uneasiness in Rong Xiu's heart intensified. He hollered, "Deep Shen formation, activate." His low and powerful voice reverberated far and wide. Instantly, all the cultivators in the palace exerted their strength. Rays of light intersected on the gigantic Deep Shen formation. Very quickly they outlined a gigantic figure. A dragon's roar reverberated between heaven and earth. It was actually a 7th-grade fiend, red-tailed flood dragon. Its entire body was silver, and only its tail was red like a burning flame. Its body was huge and it almost covered the entire sky. When the dragon's roar sounded, even the ground seemed to move. The Deep Xian Formation was a protective formation around the palace, but very few people knew that this Xian Formation was actually suppressing a red-tailed flood dragon. And it was the most formidable part of the Deep Xian Formation. Even though the red-tailed flood dragon was a 7th-grade fiend, it had the bloodline of an ancient legendary fiend, the Great Phoenix Dragon. The red-tailed flood dragon could be considered the strongest existence among the 7th-grade fiends. Rumors had it that some red-tailed flood dragons had the chance to break through to 8th grade or even higher. The red-tailed flood dragon hovered in midair, and its gigantic red eyes were icy cold. It was indifferent. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I didn't expect a fiend of such a grade to be hidden under the Deep Xian Formation. Even though I'm already a Stage 5 warrior, it's still a little wishful thinking for me to deal with a 7th-grade fiend. Unless I can break through to the peak of a Stage 6 warrior, I'll only have a sliver of hope. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, circulated her energy and rapidly set up a barrier around her. The next moment, the red-tailed flood dragon rapidly charged toward Situ Xingqian. Wherever it passed, black cracks appeared in the air. This showed how strong the suppression around it was. Then the dragon's tail harshly swung out. It heavily hit the barrier in front of Situ Xingqian. Boom! A loud collision sound was heard. A suppressive force directly passed through the barrier and crushed Situ Xingqian's body. Her body trembled and her face instantly turned much paler. But the next moment, elation flashed across her eyes. That's because the barrier didn't break. With my current Stage 5 warrior strength, the barrier I set up definitely won't be able to block the red-tailed flood dragon's attack. Hence, I directly used the light pillar's energy to form this barrier. It's indeed very strong. Situ Xingqian was slightly relieved and continued to absorb the surrounding heaven and earth force. As long as I have a little more time, I might be the red-tailed flood dragon's opponent. Seeing that Situ Xingqian actually withstood the red-tailed flood dragon's attack, the spectators below were shocked. What's with the greenish-red glow on her body? It actually contains such a strong force. In such a short time she already broke through to become a Stage 5 warrior. No. She's actually already an intermediate Stage 5 warrior. Is she going to break through to become a Stage 6 warrior? Did you see that? She seems to be bleeding. Her physical body probably can't take it anymore. What exactly is she planning to do? Not only in the palace, but everyone in the entire imperial city had already seen the commotion. They all looked up at the scene. Situ Xingqian ignored all the gazes. Something seemed to be moving in her chest and blood kept seeping out of her body. However, she couldn't feel any pain and only felt that she was surrounded by a ball of fire. Suddenly, her gaze focused and she looked somewhere. She waved her sleeves. A powerful wave of energy swept out. Chu Liyue, who was hiding in Qinghe Hall, felt the commotion behind him and alarms went off in his heart. He turned around. A vast suppression came toward him. Digression, I slept at 5 p.m. Woo. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 453. A strong force morphed into a bloody whip and harshly lashed toward her. Chu Liyue immediately backed away. The wooden table that was blocking it instantly shattered. Shards flew everywhere. Half of Qinghe Hall's roof was instantly blown away. However, the bloody whip didn't stop. Instead, it swept toward Chu Liyue at an even faster speed. Emperor Jiwen, who was standing on the other side of the room, was also shocked by the commotion and immediately turned around. The two of them looked into each other's eyes. Deep shock flashed across Emperor Jiwen's eyes. Chu Liyue paused in her actions. However, during this short pause, the bloody whip had already reached her waist and was tightly coiling around her. Then her body was harshly pulled away by the bloody whip. Emperor Jiwen's eyes flashed, and he actually hid in an even more secluded corner that wasn't affected. At the same time, the barrier around his body was strengthened. As long as nobody went near him, nobody would notice his abnormality. Chu Liyue's heart sank. Emperor Jiwen's gaze just now was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, the bloody whip around her waist tightened again. Chu Liyue suddenly turned around and realized that the other end of the bloody whip was in Situ Xingqian's hands. Situ Xingqian gently waved her wrist, and Chu Liyue's body uncontrollably flew toward her. Chu Luiyue immediately pulled out her dagger. She harshly slashed at the bloody whip. The bloody whip broke with a loud sound. But before Chu Luiyue could rejoice, she saw the broken part of the bloody whip quickly reconnect. This blood whip was condensed from that strange power, and the dagger was unable to completely cut it apart. In the blink of an eye, she was only 10 steps away from Situ Xingchen. Situ Xingchen raised her chin and arrogantly looked at Chu Luiyue in front of her. It's indeed you. Now that she had broken through to become an intermediate stage 5 warrior, her perception of her surroundings had increased by several times. Just now she clearly felt a very familiar and disgusting aura, so she decisively attacked. It really was that B*TC. Every time Situ Xingchen saw Chu Luiyue's face, hatred would surge in her heart. She would definitely make Chu Luiyue pay her back 100-fold for everything she had experienced before. Thinking of this, she waved her wrist without hesitation. The blood whip suddenly loosened and immediately lashed towards Chu Luiyue's face. Chu Luiyue immediately dodged. However, Situ Xingchen's current cultivation level was much higher than hers, and it was the same for her speed and strength. Even though she had already dodged at full speed, she was still caught in the crossfire. Chu Luiyue's left arm was instantly lacerated. Blood flowed like a river. Because of this powerful impact, her body also fell to the ground fiercely. The moment he saw Chu Luiyue appear in the air, Yi Lao was shocked and wanted to rush over to help. That girl is still a stage 3 warrior. How can she be Situ Xingchen's match? But as soon as he moved, Elder Zhong Yi blocked his path again. Elder Zhong Yi, who had suffered a lot previously and was very aggrieved, finally vented his anger. Yi Zhiding, didn't you say that your precious disciple is a rare genius? Why are you in such a hurry to help? Why don't we take a good look at the two of them and see who will win? Yi Zhiding finally couldn't hold it in and scolded. Who does that Situ Xingchen think she is? How can she be compared to my disciple? Do you think that the humiliation at the Qing Jiao competition wasn't enough? Zhong Yi, don't be smug too early. Situ Xingchen activated the bronze cauldron on her own accord and swallowed the strength of hundreds of cultivators. Even if she can break through in a short period of time, there will be endless trouble in the future. Zhong Ye's heart skipped a beat. No wonder I felt that Situ Xingchen's aura was a little off. But at such a crucial moment, how can I boost someone else's morale and destroy my own? You don't have to worry about this. You'd better think about whether or not your precious disciple can survive this time. From what I see, Xingchen's move can directly take away half of her life. She's just a stage 3 warrior. Perhaps she can't even last 3 moves against Xingchen. Yi Zhiding's expression was extremely cold as he stared at Elder Zhong Yi with deadly eyes and said word by word, I only have this one disciple in my entire life. If anyone dares to hurt her, I won't rest until I'm dead. As his voice fell, the aura on his body suddenly skyrocketed. Elder Zhong Yi was stunned. Yi Zhiding is actually serious about this. The next moment, Elder Yi had already rushed toward him. The two of them instantly engaged in a fight. Rong Jiu stared at the scene in midair and his expression didn't look too good. Just now, Chu Luiyue seemed to have come out of Qinghe Hall. The crowd behind him fell silent. Rong Jiu turned around and walked toward Qinghe Hall with big strides. Previously he had clearly sent quite a few people to escort Emperor Zhaowen to Qinghe Hall. But Chu Luiyue was actually there as well. If it weren't for Situ Xingchen's sudden attack, he didn't know when he would find out about this. Just as Chu Luiyue's body was about to land heavily on the ground, she suddenly felt a force pulling her from behind. Chu Luiyue turned around and realized that it was Dumpling biting the corner of her shirt. He pulled her back. The soft material couldn't withstand such a pull and it suddenly tore apart. Panic flashed across Dumpling's eyes. If I land on her, I'll be seriously injured. The piercing aura was like a steel knife as it quickly scraped across Chu Luiyue's body. She focused her gaze and saw that the white marble floor was rapidly approaching. Her heart tingled, and she was about to activate the water droplet strength in her dantian when she saw a white figure flash across her eyes. The next moment she felt herself falling into a ball of softness. Shue Shue. Chu Luiyue looked at Shue Shue, who suddenly appeared and saved her, in surprise. Shue Shue's 4 hooves stepped lightly as it carried Chu Luiyue up. A majestic lion's roar reverberated throughout the area. Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. In midair, Chu Luiyue, who should have fallen to the ground, was sitting on the back of a muscular snow-white lion. The wind blew and her black hair fluttered like a black flag in the wind. Not only was there not the slightest bit of timidity or fear on that peerlessly beautiful face, it was instead filled with a lofty majesty. Cold, arrogant, determined. At one glance she was incomparably noble, and it made one subconsciously want to submit to her. She and Situ Xingchen were facing each other from afar, but even Situ Xingchen, who had a higher cultivation level, seemed to be shorter. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were all dazed. Is this really Chu Liyue? Chu Liyue lowered her gaze and glanced at the wound on her left arm. She then slowly raised her head and stared coldly at Situ Xingchen in front of her. Her lips suddenly curved up into a cold smile. Very good. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 454. Situ Xingchen was taken aback by Chu Liyue's gaze, and a tinge of fear unknowingly grew in her heart. However, she suddenly woke up in the next moment. Fear. Chu Liyue is definitely not my match now. The one who should be afraid should be Chu Liyue. Situ Xingchen suppressed her emotions as her gaze landed on the white lion, and her pupils constricted. That's clearly Rong Xiu's fiend. Rong Xiu has never summoned it in front of others before, and very few people know about this. I only found out about it once by accident. Now it actually appeared here and even saved Chu Liyue. Is it trying to help Chu Liyue to the end? Situ Xingchen clenched her teeth and suddenly sneered. Why? Do you want to fight with me? Chu Liyue circulated the force around his body, and an abundant amount of force flowed out of his dantian and into his right index finger. You wanted to kill me first. Am I not allowed to kill you in return? Situ Xingchen did not care about Chu Liyue's actions. Instead, she chuckled as if she had heard a joke. You're just a stage 3 warrior? Her words were filled with undisguised mockery and disdain. Chu Liyue's smile deepened. Yes, I do. I'm indeed a stage 3 warrior now, but I didn't say that I can only display the abilities of a stage 3 warrior. Situ Xingchen almost thought that Chu Liyue had gone crazy. Okay. Today I want to see how long you can be arrogant for. The moment she said that, the bloody whip in her hand flew up again. She whipped it harshly. Pick. This time she used an even stronger force than before. When the bloody whip pierced through the air, it easily tore the space apart and left a few black cracks. In the blink of an eye, the bloody whip carried a strong force and went straight for Chu Liyue. Shui quickly dodged. Its speed was extremely fast and it looked like a bolt of lightning. The blood whip missed. Situ Xingchen's face darkened. With the help of that high-level magical beast, not to mention killing Chu Liyue, even wanting to injure her had become a difficult task. She raised her wrist. The blood whip chased after Chu Liyue. But Shui's figure flashed and she easily dodged the attack again. Situ Xingchen refused to believe it and attacked again. Above the blood whip, there was even a faint layer of green-red light. The power contained within it was much stronger than the previous 2 times. When the bloody whip flew out, Situ Xingchen angrily shouted, "What the hell? Don't run if you have the guts." Before Chu Liyue could reply, Shui had already turned around and raised a claw, swinging it forward fiercely. Whoosh! The blood whip was torn apart by Shui's claws. Situ Xingchen gasped. This magical beast was actually stronger than he had imagined. Shui glanced at Situ Xingchen. Her icy blue eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if she was looking down on an ant. Chu Liyue lightly patted Shui's head. Well done. Shui turned around and the frost in its eyes disappeared, replaced by unconcealed arrogance and delight. That huge furry head intimately rubbed against Chu Liyue's palm a few times. It was completely different from its previous cold and dignified appearance. Situ Xingchen was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She was also affected by the counterattack just now. Her internal organs felt like they were squeezed into a ball. She originally wanted to take the chance to take revenge and get rid of Chu Liyue completely, but it seemed like it would be a little difficult now. Unless my cultivation level could increase again. Yes. I can only kill Chu Liyue if I continue to cultivate and become an even stronger warrior. Thinking of this, Situ Xingchen took a deep breath in and strengthened the barrier around her. Then she closed her eyes and continued to absorb the surrounding power. Actually, the power contained in the greenish-red light from the bronze cauldron kept flowing into her body. As long as she focused at the most crucial moment and tried to break through, she would succeed. Chu Luiyue saw Situ Xingqian suddenly stop. He thought about it and understood her intentions. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Fighting whenever she wants and stopping to break through whenever she wants? Just as Chu Luiyue thought of this, a red figure flashed across his eyes. Dumpling actually flew directly towards Situ Xingqian. At this point, if Chu Luiyue was in front, he would see Dumpling puffing up her cheeks in anger. Damn it! My limelight has been stolen. Once Dumpling thought of how it tried to pull Chu Luiyue back but failed and was even swept away by that power, it was furious and embarrassed. Compared to the White Lion's performance, it had no face at all. Upon seeing Dumpling rushing toward her, Situ Xingqian's lips curled up into a cold smile. This barrier's defensive power is very strong, and even the 7th-grade red-tailed flood dragon might not be able to break it, let alone this 3rd-grade blood ferret. It does have some capabilities, but, with a bang, Dumpling directly pounced on the barrier and harshly bit down on it. A gigantic hole instantly appeared. Situ Xingqian's smile froze and disbelief filled her eyes. How is this possible? As if venting its anger, Dumpling harshly bit to the side. A similar scene appeared in the Qin Jiao competition again. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but be shocked. Why does Dumpling's teeth seem to be better than before? Even though the barrier around Situ Xingqian was thick, it couldn't stop Dumpling from creating such a barrier. At first she wanted to ignore this matter and quickly break through. However, when she saw Dumpling biting a hole and stuffing itself into it, she finally couldn't take it anymore and was forced to stop. Chu Luiyue. If you're really capable, fight one-on-one with me. These fiends are nothing. Chu Luiyue blinked and smiled. Isn't it my capability that I can summon such a fiend to help me? I didn't say that you can't do this. Since you hate me to the core, just use whatever means you have. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be choked by something and her face flushed red. How can a normal fiend be these two's match? Chu Luiyue suddenly shouted, Xue Xingqian. Xue Xue. Xue Xue seemed to have telepathy with her as it stomped on the ground and instantly rushed towards Situ Xingqian. Upon seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Is Chu Luiyue actually planning to fight Situ Xingqian head-on? That white lion is a high-level fiend. Didn't you see how easily it defeated Situ Xingqian's attack? With its help, Chu Luiyue might win. But Situ Xingqian is a few grades stronger than her. If they fight head-on, Chu Luiyue will definitely be at a disadvantage. 2 rays of light, one green and one red, gathered in Situ Xingqian's hands. Then she harshly clasped her hands together. The 2 rays of light instantly clashed together. Dual palms. Chu Luiyue raised her hand. On her right index finger, a dazzling ray of light suddenly flashed. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 455. That ray of light shone in her eyes and it was dazzling beyond compare. However, this ray of light was nothing compared to the gigantic greenish-red palm print that Situ Xingqian executed in midair. Everyone's gaze was focused on the palm print that contained a strong suppression. Chu Luiyue looked up and squinted her eyes slightly. There seemed to be a strange pattern in the middle of the palm print, and it was faintly discernible. It was exactly the same as the pattern that appeared on the light pillar previously. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. That pattern was clearly a seal, but for some reason, it appeared on the palm print again. Suddenly she felt a movement coming from the cosmic bag. It was the wooden box that she snatched from Situ Xingqian previously. That strange pattern seemed to contain a special power. Every time it appeared, it would cause a huge reaction from the wooden box. At this moment, Situ Xingqian hollered, "Go!" That palm print slowly moved toward Chu Luiyue. A strong suppression was continuously emitted from it. The surrounding space seemed to be greatly suppressed as it became heavy and stagnant. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that she was in a swamp, and every move she made required a lot of effort. Situ Xingqian's power has definitely reached the peak of stage 5. Chu Luiyue is probably in danger. She actually rushed forward. It's definitely too late for her to escape now. I really don't know what she's thinking. The crowd discussed fervently. Chu Luiyue, who was in midair, didn't hear them. But even if she could hear them, she wouldn't care. Since she dared to do this, she naturally has her reasons. That gigantic palm print seemed to be moving slowly, but it was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of Chu Liyue. In comparison, Chu Liyue looked exceptionally thin and petite, as if she would be swallowed by that palm print at any moment. But at this moment, Chu Liyue finally stretched out her right hand and lightly tapped forward with her index finger. Jingshan finger. Buzz. A ripple suddenly appeared in midair. Then the faint glow on his fingertips suddenly shone brightly. Half of the sky above Chu Liyue's head seemed to have lit up. That light was grand, brilliant, and majestic. It was as if it could generously and gently encompass everything in the world. Under the illumination of this light, the strange pattern on the palm print suddenly appeared extremely ugly. The power of both sides intertwined. Like snow meeting sunlight, the palm print actually began to quietly and quickly melt away. The smug smile on Situ Xingqian's face suddenly froze, and fear crept into her eyes. How could this be? How could this be? She had used all of her strength in this attack. But why was he defeated so quickly after Chu Liyue made his move? From the looks of it, there was no room for a counterattack. Situ Xingqian kept circulating the energy in her body and channeling it into the palm print, but it was to no avail. She looked at Chu Liyue in disbelief and resentment. One finger. Chu Liyue actually used one finger to defeat me. Actually, Chu Liyue was just as shocked as Situ Xingqian. This was the first time she had officially executed Jingshan finger after learning it. She knew that Jingshan finger was very powerful, but she didn't expect it to be this powerful. It was clearly stronger than same-grade warrior techniques. Chu Liyue looked at his finger. That grand and brilliant light contained immense power. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she probably wouldn't have believed this scene. Could this be the strength of a heaven-grade warrior technique? Situ Xingqian finally panicked. If I continue fighting with Chu Liyue, I definitely won't be able to gain any advantage. The only thing I can do now is to quickly increase my abilities. Boom. That gigantic palm print finally disappeared completely. Even that strange pattern disappeared once again. Blood seeped out of the corner of Situ Xingqian's mouth. Together with her originally blood-stained body, she looked even more pathetic. The next moment she suddenly turned around and ran into the distance. Chu Liyue raised his brows slightly and patted Shueishui lightly. Shueishui immediately understood and rushed forward. Its speed was naturally faster than Situ Xingqian's, and it blocked her path in no time. Seeing that Chu Liyue had caught up so quickly, Situ Xingqian's face turned a little ugly. Eldest Princess Situ, we haven't decided who the winner is, yet you're running away just like that? Isn't it a little inappropriate? Asked Chu Liyue with a faint smile. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. She could feel countless pairs of eyes staring at her from below. Mockery, mockery and disdain. They're all here for me. Who said that I'm running away? Situ Xingqian forced herself to shout, and her voice was much sharper than before. You just used some unorthodox methods. Chu Liyue, do you really think that you're my match? Chu Liyue laughed. Unorthodox methods? Those words should be returned to Situ Xingqian. You'll know whether I'm your match or not very soon. Chu Liyue smiled, but a tinge of murderous intent flashed across her eyes. The next moment she jumped up and went straight for Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian was shocked at first, but she then sneered in her heart. Chu Liyue actually wants to have a physical fight with me. This is the stupidest choice I've made today. The two of us are 2 whole stages apart, and Chu Liyue's physical strength can't be compared to mine. If Chu Liyue continues to use the previous move, I might not be able to withstand it. But no. I'm clearly courting death. You're courting death. Situ Xingqian circulated the force in her body and stretched out her hand. Flying eagle claw. A few afterimages mixed together. They all went for Chu Liyue's face. Chu Liyue leaned forward. She didn't know how her wrist moved, but it avoided Situ Xingqian's move and tightly clamped onto her wrist. Then she exerted force with her fingers and tightly clenched them. The crisp sound of a bone breaking was heard. Ah! Situ Xingqian cried out in pain. Her entire face turned pale. At that moment there was only one thought left in her mind. Why is Chu Liyue's wrist so strong? Situ Xingqian instinctively raised her leg and kicked at Chu Liyue. However, Chu Liyue was even faster. Bang! The two people's legs harshly collided. Situ Xingqian felt as if she had hit a metal plate, and her entire leg instantly turned numb. After a short pause, intense pain surged through her. She suddenly looked up and stared at Chu Liyue with eyes full of resentment. "UB**. Chu Liyue's lips curved up and a cold glint flashed across her palm. It went straight for Situ Xingqian's heart. Situ Xingqian was shocked. She immediately tried her best to dodge it. That dagger pierced into her chest and was only a few centimeters away from her heart. However, Chu Liyue didn't let go. Instead, he tightened his grip on the dagger's handle and harshly twisted it. Separate. Two thin flying daggers instantly entered Situ Xingqian's body. Digression. I'm adjusting my schedule today. I'll take my medicine and sleep later. I hope I can sleep well. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m. please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 456. Two cold, piercing sensations instantly spread throughout her body. Situ Xingqian's face turned pale and she slowly lowered her head to take a look. Blood slowly seeped out from the front of her shirt. Choo-choo. Two flying daggers pierced through her chest and flew out. Chu Liyue bent his arm and harshly hit her shoulder with his elbow. Situ Xingqian violently spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Chu Liyue hurriedly dodged and jumped onto Xue Xue's back, which happened to rush over. Bang! Situ Xingqian landed heavily on the ground. As the force of the impact was too strong, her body dragged on the ground for a long time before finally stopping. A long trail of blood was left on the ground and it looked ghastly. There was dead silence in the sky. Almost everyone thought that Chu Liyue was dead for sure, but they didn't expect Situ Xingqian to be the one who lost after the two of them had an intense fight. Even though the fiend's appearance couldn't go unnoticed, Chu Liyue did personally knock Situ Xingqian down just now. Elder Yi and Elder Zong Yi, who were in the midst of a chaotic fight, finally stopped when they saw this scene. However, the two of them had very different expressions. Elder Ye's worries instantly disappeared, and the wrinkles on his face bloomed like a flower. His eyes were filled with unconcealable delight. I've long said that Situ Xingqian doesn't have the right to be compared to Lu Yu. Zong Yi, what else do you have to say now? Elder Zong Ye's face was so ugly that it was as if he had swallowed a fly. Situ Xingqian's cultivation level is clearly much higher than Chu Liyue's. How could she lose? I originally thought that I would definitely win this match. Yet it ended up like this. His eyes flickered and he immediately wanted to go forward. Zong Yi, what are you planning to do? Old man Yi moved and stood in front of Elder Zong Yi, his face full of smiles. Zong Ye's face darkened. You want to stop me? Look at what you're saying. Didn't you also stop me just now? We're the same. Looking at Zong Ye's ugly face, Elder Yi only felt proud and elated. Just now I wanted to help Lu Yu, but this fellow stopped me. Now I want to help Situ Xingqian. How can it be so easy? Elder Zong Yi frowned. With Yi Zhiding around, he couldn't spare any time to help at all. Didn't you say earlier that you wanted to see who would win in the end? Then, why don't we watch it together? Elder Ye's face was full of smiles, but the biting cold aura around him made it clear that he absolutely would not let Elder Zong Yi pass. Elder Zong Ye's heart was filled with hatred. While the two of them were talking, Xue Xue had already swooped down with Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue easily leaped and landed on the ground. Situ Xingqian struggled to stand up. However, the wounds on his body were still bleeding. The pain on her shoulder and back was intense. She didn't need to look to know that her shoulder blade had been pierced. Didn't you want to fight me one-on-one? Chu Liyue said slowly as he played with the dagger in his hand. As you wish. It was much more convenient for the two of them to fight on the ground. When Situ Xingqian saw Chu Liyue's nonchalant smile, she couldn't help but shiver harshly. She only felt that the current Chu Liyue was like a demon that walked out of hell. What do you want to do? Situ Xingqian yelled fiercely. I'm country Xing Luo's eldest princess. How dare you touch me? Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh out loud. Eldest Princess Situ, of course I know your identity. But didn't I just punch a hole through you? You don't have to ask such nonsense, right? Situ Xingqian's heart sank. Chu Liyue really looks like he doesn't have any reservations at all. You seem to have forgotten what you just did. Chu Liyue lifted his chin and his gaze swept across her entire body. Who do you think will speak up for you now? After causing such a huge commotion in country Yao Chen's palace, neither Emperor Zhouan nor Rongjie would let this matter rest. Besides, Situ Xingqian was in the wrong first. Previously, Situ Yen couldn't save her, so it's even more impossible this time. As Chu Liyue spoke, he took a step forward. Panic flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes, and she instinctively took a step back. The current me might not even be Chu Liyue's match. Besides, Chu Liyue has an advanced fiend helping him. Situ Xingqian's heart became increasingly frantic, and something crazily moved in her chest, wanting to rush out. It would be great if he could become stronger. It was as if a sharp voice kept reverberating in her mind. Chu Liyue squinted his eyes and was about to go forward to finish Situ Xingqian off completely when he saw her suddenly look up. A bloody glow flashed across Situ Xingqian's eyes. Chu Liyue's eyes shrunk. Instinctively, he felt that something was amiss with Situ Xingqian. Previously, Situ Xingqian's eyes were actually bloodshot, but Chu Liyue thought that she became like that because of her anger and agitation. But now, that bloody red color seemed to have become even more intense. The most important thing was that Situ Xingqian's pupils had actually turned red as well. From afar they looked like two eyeballs filled with craziness and murderous aura. Dong dong. A strange sound came from the Qiankuan bag. Dong dong. This time the sound was even clearer. Chu Liyue suddenly understood something. This was the sound from the wooden box in the cosmic bag. The thing inside seemed to have been summoned and crazily wanted to come out. She lowered her head and was about to suppress it when she suddenly saw a ray of light rushing out and heading straight for Situ Xingqian. It was that wooden box. Situ Xingqian grabbed the wooden box in her hands. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. Then she saw Situ Xingqian open the wooden box. That goatskin scroll glowed faintly as it floated in front of Situ Xingqian. Situ Xingqian threw the wooden box down and slowly bit her fingertip. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. The next moment, she held the goatskin scroll in her hands and used her bleeding finger to lightly draw a line on it. Chu Liyue stared at this scene closely and felt that she seemed to have overlooked something. After looking at it for a while, she finally understood what was going on. Situ Xingqian seemed to be controlled by something. At this moment, there was no longer any normal emotions in her pair of eyes. There was only endless craziness and murderous intent left. Her movements were stiff and slow, as if there was an invisible hand that was controlling everything about her. Chu Liyue's gaze landed on the goatskin scroll again. Suddenly her eyes focused. The picture that Situ Xingqian drew with her blood was clearly Chu. Chu Liyue quickly threw the dagger in her hand. It went straight for Situ Xingqian. But at this moment, Situ Xingqian had already drawn the last line. The complete and strange picture appeared in front of her eyes. Ding! The dagger seemed to have hit something and suddenly bounced back. The next moment, the goatskin scroll slowly opened up. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.